Chapter 1 Notice from the Orphanage. Principal Dumbledore, this is this year's freshman admission list. Thank you for your hard work, Professor McGonagall, said the slender old man with white hair as white as snow. Harry is also on the freshman list this year. Don't worry, Professor McGonagall, I asked Hagrid and he will pick up Harry. Do you want a pile of cockroaches? Professor McGonagall shook her head and turned to leave the principal's office. Wait, Professor McGonagall. Dumbledore stopped McGonagall, picked up the list of new students, and said with some hesitation, I will go to this child myself. 1991, London, England. Winstanley Road, Elizabeth Orphanage. The boy frowned and sat on a chair in the yard. Arthur Green was in a bad mood because recently there was a child in the same hospital, John, who always wanted to cause trouble for him because of his age. Huh, here we go again, Arthur sneered, looked at the tall figure approaching him, got up and went to the grove behind the orphanage. Hey, boy, is this the place you chose to be beaten? Or are you ready to kneel down and beg me for mercy when you see no one here? After that, he laughed. Arthur didn't talk to him, took out the bamboo stick hidden behind his back, and before John could react, he whipped his right leg hard. FK obviously he didn't expect Arthur, who seemed to be gentle, to sneak attack and be so ruthless. John held his right leg in pain with both hands and wailed on the ground. Very good, this way you won't be able to escape later. Arthur looked at him with cold eyes. Fake, what do you want to do? At this time, John looked at Arthur beside him, with a trace of panic in his eyes. Don't be afraid, I won't do anything to you, I just want to reason with you. After saying that, he showed a warm smile, then knelt down and slapped John hard on the face. John looked at Arthur, who was smiling at himself and hitting him at the same time. He was so frightened that he lowered his head and did not dare to say a word. He regretted provoking him. Arthur grabbed John's hair, pulled him back, made him raise his head, looked at himself, and asked, I'm curious, there are so many people in the orphanage, why do you bother me? I just brag to others, saying that I am the boss and can bully others at will. As soon as Arthur heard this, he knew he was lying, so he let go of him and stood up. When John thought he had escaped, a foot stepped hard on the back of his right hand. My patience is limited, you have to think carefully before answering. What I tell is all the truth, you believe me. The force on Arthur's foot increased a bit, and he moved it back and forth on the back of his hand. John's face turned pale in pain. I said, I just saw that you were unhappy and wanted to teach you a lesson. Truth or lies are not important to Arthur, John's fear is important to him. Arthur looked at the painful John and asked, is today's lesson okay? His voice was so warm and kind. Arthur, I was wrong, please let me go. Looking at John's expression, Arthur knew that he had achieved his goal, and John was scared. There is no way, in a place like an orphanage, people can't stand firmly. Of course Arthur will forgive him, after all, he is still just a child. He released the foot on John's right hand and kicked him hard in the stomach. Ouch! John curled up on the ground in pain. He raised his foot and rubbed it on John's clothes, wiped off the blood on the sole of his shoe, and said goodbye to John with a smile. What Arthur didn't know was that an old man who looked very old and had white hair was standing in the corner watching everything. Arthur, are you not hurt? I heard that John followed you into the woods. As soon as Arthur came out of the woods, a beautiful girl ran towards Arthur, looking slightly worried. Although the question asked by the girl was a bit strange, Arthur answered her politely. It's okay, I just talked some sense with John, and now he understands that he was wrong. Looking at Arthur, who had brilliant blonde hair, extremely handsome face and elegant behavior, the girl blushed slightly and said, Arthur, you are really a gentleman. After bidding farewell to the reluctant girl, Arthur returned to the four-person dormitory. Arthur Green is a time traveler who traveled to this world a year ago. Before time travel, he was a college student who was about to graduate, and then he woke up and became a 10-year-old orphan. But I soon accepted the reality. I was an orphan in my previous life, and I am still an orphan now, and I am more than 10 years younger. Thinking about it, I even feel that I have made a profit. After spending half a year and confirming that I did not have a gold finger, I started thinking about my future. The first thing that comes to mind is definitely making money. The only thing he can think of now is the 2002 World Cup in South Korea, but that is still more than 10 years away. Arthur studied science in his previous life and wanted to publish some theories in advance, but he had no money, no means, and it was unrealistic. After all, I started as an orphan and hadn't even read the book for a few days. How could I know those theories? I was afraid I would be arrested and sliced for study. Later, I also considered ways to make money from songs, scripts, novels, etc. After all, I am so handsome, and it is not easy to join the European and American entertainment circles. Arthur thought about it and found that it wouldn't work. He could sing few English songs, and he could only remember the rough plots of scripts and novels. It would be difficult to write them out. This plan of getting involved in the entertainment industry was classified as a backup plan by Arthur. Now Arthur can only wait until he grows up a few years, set a small goal first, become the world's top scientist, publish those theories in advance, and let those people live in his shadow. I am J. Charlotte Ray. Gugu, an owl suddenly flew in from outside the window, then dropped a letter on Arthur's head, then stood still on the table, staring at Arthur. Arthur was a little confused and picked up the wax-sealed letter. It was quite thick. There was a familiar logo on the front of the envelope, and underneath it was written, "Do not disturb the sleeping dragon." Arthur was a little stunned, and then he slapped his head and remembered, 1991, London, Owl, he had traveled to the world of Harry Potter. WTF. Arthur is now excited and nervous, looking forward to and apprehensive. After opening the envelope and taking out the letter inside, there were a few lines of beautiful words written on the top piece of paper. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Dumbledore. Sir Merlin, First Class, Chief Wizard of the Wizengamot, President of the International Federation of Wizards. Dear Mr. Green, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Attached is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st. Please inform us of your reply before July 31st. Your loyal Minerva McGonagall. Vice Principal, female. The next few sheets of paper are all about the introduction to Hogwarts School, as well as the names of the books and equipment required for admission. After answering the letter and feeding the owl some nuts, an electronic sound sounded in Arthur's mind. Ding, system, start. Arthur, who was holding the notice and was about to go find the nun at the orphanage, stiffened and froze on the spot. His late gold finger finally arrived. Chapter 2: The Liver Emperor's Life starting from Hogwarts. Host, Arthur Green. Occupation, Wizard. Inventory, none. Talents, max 10. Charms, 8, gifted. Potions, 7, regarded as a gift. Transformation, 9, excellent talent. Divination, 1, time is good, time is not good. Black magic, 11, Dementors will tremble when they see you. Number of card draws, 0. Become the most powerful and terrifying Dark Lord. Looking at his luxurious data panel, Arthur twitched the corner of his mouth. Everything was considered normal. After all, no time traveler has bad talent. What's going on with black magic? Isn't the highest limit only 10? Even if my talent is so high, it's still a little more than that. Could it be that the system felt that there were limits to being a wizard, so it forcibly mutated him. Arthur was a little lucky now that the system didn't think that witches were better. Arthur felt that the last sentence of the system was a slander and slander against himself. Arthur has always considered himself an elegant gentleman who is smart, kind, and polite. He is cold and ruthless on the outside, but he is still full of truth, kindness, and beauty in his heart. Anyone who has a relationship with him knows that he is a person who likes to make friends, is reasonable, and can get along with everyone. The number of card draws is temporarily 0. According to the system's explanation, the card draw opportunities can be obtained by learning magic knowledge. In other words, if Arthur works hard to learn magic, the system will reward card draws. This routine looks a bit familiar. Arthur's liver suddenly felt a chill. This is asking Arthur to develop on the road to the liver emperor. Mommy, I received an admission notice from a school and am going to study there. Which school? Magic school. Grandma. She is Catholic. I wasn't cheated. Arthur tried to explain to her. Boom, boom, boom. There was a knock on the door, and Arthur, who was thirsty after explaining to his grandma, got up and opened the door. Standing at the door was an old man with a long silver-white beard and a face that looked kind and wise. Arthur was stunned for a moment at the door, then returned to normal. Old sir, who are you looking for? I'm looking for you, kid. His smile was warm and friendly, reassuring. Won't you invite me in first? Only then did Arthur react and asked him to enter the room. Old gentleman, do you have anything to do with Arthur? Grandma asked first with a scrutinizing gaze. Madam, don't worry, I am the principal of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. You can call me Dumbledore. Sir, this is not funny, and I don't believe that the principal of a school will come to pick up the students in person. If you don't tell the truth, I will call the police. After saying this, Grandma picked up the phone and prepared to call the police. Dumbledore smiled, waved his hand gently, and the sofa leaning against the wall floated up. OMG, God bless you, may the Lord forgive you. Grandma was startled and quickly confessed to the Lord. Arthur stood aside with wild eyes. It was amazing. Is this the power of magic? Ma'am, it's obvious that I'm a wizard. How do you say that the magic school is real and Arthur is also a wizard? Of course, Arthur can receive a notice from Hogwarts, indicating that there is magic in his body and there has been a magic riot. Arthur scratched his head in embarrassment. He had traveled through time without getting the memory of the suffering master, so he didn't know about the magic riot, otherwise he wouldn't have made so many plans. Mr. Principal, can you tell me about Hogwarts? Of course. Dumbledore looked at Arthur kindly. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry consists of 4 houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. The first step for new students is to sort them into colleges. The school will divide students into 4 colleges. As for how to sort them, kid, I can't tell you now, because this is a tradition in the magical world. But don't worry, the 4 houses are all excellent. Gryffindor represents courage and courage, Hufflepuff represents hard work, patience, and loyalty, Ravenclaw represents wisdom, creativity, and understanding, and Slytherin represents ambition and shrewdness. And leadership skills. No matter which college you enter, you can get a good education. The professors at the school. What, a professor dies every year at Hogwarts? Arthur, this school is too dangerous. Ma'am, no, some are just unable to move. And the students in the school are very safe. There have been very few student deaths over the years. Grandma was still a little worried. In his opinion, even without magic, Arthur would have a bright future with his intelligence. Arthur, you are more mature than other children of your age. You can make your own decision. Arthur definitely wanted to go to Hogwarts. After hearing his decision, Mammy did not stop him and reluctantly agreed. Mr. Principal, how do you calculate your school's tuition? Arthur is an orphan after all, and the financial situation in the hospital is not optimistic. Grandma said with a sad face. Don't worry, ma'am, there will be a loan for new Muggle students. Although it's not much, it will definitely be enough for him. Madam, it is inevitable for Arthur to go to Hogwarts to study. The magic power in the little wizard's body is very dangerous. If he does not receive reasonable guidance, Arthur's life will be in danger. Okay, after hearing Dumbledore's words, Mammy finally agreed. Mammy talked to Dumbledore for a while, and finally asked him if magic existed, and whether the main memory existed. Okay, Arthur, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning and take you to Diagon Alley to buy everything you need for school. I'll leave today. Goodbye, ma'am. Dumbledore stood up and prepared to leave. Arthur, send this old gentleman off. As a principal, it's not easy for him to be running around at such an old age. Arthur sent Principal Dumbledore to the entrance of the orphanage. Arthur, although you have no parents, you live in an environment of love. Mommy is really good to us. Arthur replied affirmatively. Children, remember, love is the greatest magic. After saying that, he disappeared from Arthur's eyes. Huh. Arthur breathed a sigh of relief. During the time he spent with Dumbledore, he was very nervous. After all, he had too many secrets. He was also glad that the old man was not someone who liked legilimency casually. Arthur, come here. Grandma stood by the office window on the second floor and shouted to Arthur downstairs. Mommy, what's the matter? Here, put it away. Grandma took an envelope from the drawer and gave it to Arthur. He opened it and saw that it was money, £150. Aren't you going to go shopping tomorrow? It would be good to bring more money. Mommy, Arthur's eyes turned red. Chapter 3, Diagon Alley. On a street with little traffic, Arthur held his right hand against the wall. His stomach was churning, and a feeling of nausea surged from his stomach to his throat. Professor, how did you manage to be completely fine? Come here a few times and you'll get used to it, and don't you think it's very interesting and exciting? Haha, sooner or later your old bones will be shaken to pieces by this broken night bus. Early this morning, Professor Dumbledore came to the orphanage and took Arthur to Diagon Alley. Arthur thought he was going to apparate with him, but he didn't expect Dumbledore to take him to experience the Wizarding World's special transportation, the night bus. The night bus travels very fast and will automatically avoid all obstacles in the direction of travel. However, this kind of vehicle is not very comfortable, because it will bump around while driving and always brake suddenly when it reaches the stop. As a result, passengers' belongings may roll around, and passengers may fall out of their chairs or vomit due to motion sickness. Arthur swore that even if he died and jumped from Hogwarts Castle, he would never ride in this kind of car again. Professor, is this the leaky cauldron you're talking about? Standing at the intersection, Arthur scanned the surrounding area. Although there were not many pedestrians coming and going, no one noticed this bar. Come on, let's go in. After entering, I discovered that it was a dirty and small bar. The bar inside is very dark and simple, with a bar counter and a few tables in the shadows of the corner. Dirty, messy, and poor, this was Arthur's first impression of this place. I really don't know how those wizards manage to eat here. Professor Dumbledore, good morning, why are you here today? Do you want a glass of butterbeer? It's mine. Tom, the bar owner, greeted them warmly. Not today, I have to take the new students to Diagon Alley, maybe next time. Tom glanced at Arthur, I understand, follow me. Bypassing the bar counter of the leaky cauldron, you come to the small patio surrounded by walls. On the surface, there is nothing here except trash cans and some weeds, but the bricks above the trash cans are a passage into Diagon Alley. See clearly, little guy, Just count 3 bricks on the trash can upwards and 2 bricks across the trash can, and then tap the wall 3 times with your wand, and the door to Diagon Alley will open. With the wand tapping 3 times on the wall, the brick began to shake and the surrounding bricks moved together, forming a round hole as if rearranged and combined, then getting bigger and bigger, and finally turned into an arch road. A long cobblestone street appeared. "Sir, what if someone moves the trash can to another location?" "Haha, many people have asked this question, please give it a try." Arthur ran over and pulled the trash can to the side and then let go. The trash can returned to its original position as if it had a sensor. "Tom has cast a spell on the trash can and it will automatically return to its place," Dumbledore explained at the side. "What about me stealing the trash can?" "Well, no one is that boring. It's not the trash can that matters, it's the brick that the wand strikes. Let's go, it's time to buy you something," Dumbledore said in a gentle tone. Then he took Arthur's hand and walked into Diagon Alley. "Go to Gringotts first and exchange for some gold galleons. Muggle money cannot be spent in the wizarding world. Wizards have wizard currency. Gold galleons are gold made of special magic. 1 gallung, equivalent to 17 sickles, or 493 nats. The wizard's exchange rate is really bad. Can you calculate it?" Arthur couldn't help complaining after hearing this. Dumbledore also laughed when he heard it. "Professor, don't goblins accept Muggle things?" "Not necessarily. Goblins will still accept gems and precious metals, but you have to be prepared for their prices to be lowered. The goblins in Gringotts are very greedy." After a while, the two came to a towering white building, Gringotts. Goblin guards in scarlet and gold uniforms stood at the gate, bowing to customers when they came. This was Arthur's first time seeing a leprechaun. He looked at it carefully and found that he was short in stature, had pale skin, had a flat nose, and had protruding eyes. He looked really strange. Approaching the second silver door with Professor Dumbledore, there are some warnings engraved on it. "Please come in, stranger, but you have to be careful. What will happen if you are greedy, blindly asking for something, getting something for nothing?" Arthur was a little skeptical about the brain circuits of these goblins. What was the use of these slogans? Others were here to rob the bank and risk their lives with you. Who cares about your slogans? It would be better to put a few more security guards. After passing through the second silver door and entering the spacious marble hall, about 100 goblins sat behind the long counter and scribbled entries in the large ledger. Some use scales to weigh coins, and some use eyepieces to detect gems. After entering, Arthur and the professor were taken to a small counter next to them by a goblin in a suit and tie. "Muggle new student?" "Yes, sir. The maximum loan for a new student is 100 galleons per semester." "Give me your admission letter." "Sir, can I exchange pounds for galleons?" "Only freshmen can apply, and the number is limited." "Forget it, Arthur originally planned to exchange pounds for galleons in the future." Arthur handed his admission notice to the goblin, and soon, the notice and a bag of galleons were handed to Arthur. "You can go out now, Mr. Green." Are goblins so efficient?" Arthur counted the galleons in his hand and left the counter after making sure there was nothing wrong. "Professor, it's done. I didn't expect the goblins to be so efficient." "Of course, people who deal with money are very efficient. Where shall we go next, Professor?" "Mrs. Malkin's robe shop, right next door to Flourish and Blott's bookstore." Diagon Alley is actually not very big, and after a while the two of them arrived at the robe shop. "Welcome to Madame Malkin's robe shop." The speaker was a short, fat witch. "It's Professor Dumbledore. Why are you the one bringing the students to buy school supplies this year? When you get older, you want to walk around outside." "I don't have much to do recently, so I came to help Professor McGonagall." "Is this year's new student?" "Please wait a moment, little one, I will come over right away to measure your size. Yes, ma'am, Arthur replied gentlemanly. In addition to Arthur, there are 3 students in the robe shop, 2 boys and 1 girl. They are about the same age as Arthur and should also be freshmen this year. Judging from their appearance, you can tell that they are from a pure-blood family, but their pride is clearly written on their faces. Several of them have black hair, so they must not be Malfoy or the others. Speaking of which, Arthur has been in Diagon Alley for a while, and he hasn't met an important character yet. Chapter 4 Magic Wand. It's your turn, kid. A short, fat witch said to Arthur with a smile. Okay, ma'am. Mrs. Malkin did not use her magic wand. With a wave of her right hand, the tape measure flew towards Arthur automatically as if it were alive, measuring his body shape and clothing size. The whole process didn't take much time, about 15 minutes. After it was over, Mrs. Malkin asked them to buy other items first, and then come back to get the ready-made clothes. Flourish and Blott's bookstore is right next to Madame Malkin's robe shop. The bookshelves here are filled with books, even to the ceiling. Among them are leather-bound books as huge as paving stones, and small silver-bound books as compact as stamps. There are also books with countless strange symbols printed on them, as well as wordless heavenly books with nothing written in them. Some books are even weirder. When Arthur comes near, he will roar loudly, which is so weird. Arthur shopped at Flourish and Blott's bookstore several times. In addition to buying all the textbooks, he also bought a copy of Hogwarts, A History of the School. I have almost forgotten the plot of the original work for a long time, and I plan to go back and read it to reminisce. Cough, 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 what kind of strange smell is this, so pungent? After Arthur and Dumbledore left the bookstore, they were going to buy dry pots. As soon as they entered the Patches Crucible shop, they were choked by a pungent smell. Are the freshmen here to buy a crucible? The potion is being boiled in the backyard, and the smell is a bit strong. A middle-aged man behind the counter said to them. Arthur really couldn't stand the smell, so after buying something, he quickly pulled Dumbledore out. Professor, do all potions smell so bad? Of course not. Some potions even smell different to different people. Arthur, you are in the 1st grade this year and you have a potion class. The professor is a potion master. Study with him and you will like this class. Understand, what Dumbledore means is not that the potion is not good, but that the person who made the potion just now is not good. Arthur nodded thoughtfully, remembering that his first-year potions teacher was Snape. I took a look at my potions talent. There should be nothing wrong with it. The system said I was gifted. If it doesn't work, just pretend to be dead in class. Anyway, all of Snape's firepower this time is on Harry. The owner of Partridge's Crucible shop saw that they had more stuff and lent them a small cart. Under his introduction, Arthur and Dumbledore came to the Ela Owl shop. Arthur shopped around but didn't buy anything. He was really short of money and planned to save some money. Dumbledore said that the school had an owl that sent letters. After spending another half-day shopping in Diagon Alley, I almost bought everything I needed to buy. Now Arthur only needed a magic wand. Arthur followed Dumbledore to Ollivander's wand shop, the largest arms store in the British wizarding world. Ollivander's wand shop is a building with an antique charm. The store is not big. As soon as you push the door and enter, you will see the counter. Standing behind it is the owner of this shop, Ollivander, who is a professional wand maker. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir, I'm here to buy a wand. Of course, the new student at Hogwarts? What's his name? I need to confirm the list, otherwise the Ministry of Magic will give me trouble. Arthur Green, sir. Okay, Mr. Green, which arm do you prefer? Right hand. After asking Ollivander, he started taking various measurements, even Arthur's fingernails. Sir, as I get older, these dimensions will also change. Will these data still be correct then? Don't worry, kid, these are all in my calculations. Ollivander said confidently. Here, try this one, apple tree, unicorn tail hair, 11 inches. It is most suitable for people with high goals and idealists, and is incompatible with black magic. Arthur waved, and a faint light lit up at the tip of the wand, and then there was no response. Arthur felt that the wand was repulsive to him. Ollivander took the wand from Arthur's hand and said to himself, "This one doesn't suit you." And then started rummaging around again. Try this one, black walnut, phoenix tail hair, 11.5 inches. Black walnut is not as common as ordinary walnut wands. The owner it seeks must have keen intuition and strong insight. Arthur took the wand. Unlike the previous wand, the tip of this wand burst out with dazzling light after Arthur took it. Still not right. Ollivander grabbed the wand again and continued to search. Grapevine wood, dragon heartstring, 11 inches. Grapevine wood wand owners almost all have lofty ambitions and extraordinary foresight. Give it a try. Arthur took the wand in his hand and waved it. With a bang, the tip of the wand emitted a blazing light, blowing up a table in Ollivander's store. Arthur was shocked. You won't have to pay for it yourself, Arthur thought to himself. He's a picky customer. Ollivander said excitedly. How about trying this one? How about trying this one again? Arthur tried more than a dozen magic wands in a row, and several tables were blown up. Fortunately, he had a repair spell that prevented him from losing money. Ollivander wiped the sweat from his head and took down a box from the top of the shelf. Try this one, the work of my youth, dragon's heartstring, 12.5 inches. A rare and powerful combination. The U does not choose mediocre or timid masters. It symbolizes death and resurrection, and the owners of U wands maintain a particularly dark and terrible reputation in the realm of duels and all curses. This wand, the wand is paired with a dragon heartstring. Arthur even doubted whether Ollivander had been a dark wizard when he was young. Otherwise, how could you make such a wand that specifically matches a dark wizard? Also, what do you mean, Arthur, look handsome, polite, and have a noble and elegant temperament? At first glance, I don't match this wand. Arthur still took the wand from Ollivander's hand. The surface of the wand was smooth and the whole was milky white. As soon as he took it, Arthur felt the magic power in his body pouring into the wand, like an arm moving his fingers. Surprisingly matched and worked well. Great, that's it, the wand chooses its master. Ollivander said excitedly from the side. My child, this wand is a bit special. It was a work of mine when I was young. It has been in the shop for decades and I haven't found its owner. I hope you can use it well. After saying this, Ollivander looked at it deeply. Arthur glanced. Are you a little wizard from a wizard family? Ollivander looked at Arthur's appearance and asked curiously. No, I'm from a Muggle orphanage. Ollivander, an orphan, with a U wand. Chapter 5 My turn, drawing cards. My 7 galleons. After paying the money, Arthur asked Ollivander, Sir, is a wizard only allowed to have one wand? Can I buy a second one? Not having a wand in the world of Harry Potter is like not having a gun in America, so Arthur wanted to buy one more, one for the front and one for the back. The Ministry of Magic only allows wizards to hold one wand. You can only buy another wand if the previous one is damaged. Got it, think of a way to grab one while masked. After getting the answer, Arthur left the wand shop. Watching Arthur leave, Ollivander felt a little uneasy and could only pray for Merlin's blessing. Professor, I kept you waiting for a long time. I didn't expect it to take so long in the wand shop. When Arthur came out, he saw Dumbledore sitting on a chair on the side of the street, chatting with people. Seeing Arthur coming, The man also stood up and left. It seems you are quite picky about wands. Dumbledore said with a smile. Yes, I chose more than a dozen but nothing was suitable. Fortunately, the last one suited me. Arthur took out the shopping list, checked that everything was bought, and then returned to Mrs. Malkin's shop. After trying on the ready-made clothes, he found that the size was right and there was no problem before leaving. After selling all the things, it was already noon. Dumbledore invited him to have lunch at the Leaky Cauldron. Although Arthur disliked it, he still accepted it. The food was not good and too sweet, but Dumbledore seemed to like it. After happily eating lunch with the old man, the two left. Dumbledore must have noticed that he had some conflicts with the night bus, and he operated when he returned. After sending Arthur to the orphanage, he left. Night. Arthur returned to his room, a single room that his mother had specially changed for him. After all, Arthur was now a wizard. In the room, on the table were a modern history of magic and Hogwarts, a history of the school that he had just bought from Diagon Alley today. Arthur quickly flipped through them, but he didn't find any useful information. Arthur can only remember roughly the plot of Harry Potter now. Before time travel, Arthur had only watched movies, when he was a child. It has been more than 10 years now, and his memory has long been blurred. Reality is reality, movies are movies, and with the addition of butterfly wings like myself, the original plot can only be used as a reference. Thinking of these, Arthur had a headache. Forget it, he was tired, didn't want to think about it anymore, and went to sleep. Quack. Early the next morning, Arthur was woken up by a cry. When he sat up from the bed, he saw that there was a birdcage on his desk, and there was a bird in it that Arthur didn't recognize. Arthur got up quickly and checked the doors and windows, but found no trace of vandalism. When I came to the table, I checked the birdcage. There was a note with my name on it, which was given to me. Opening the birdcage, a blackbird about the same size as a messenger owl jumped out. It was not afraid of people at all and flew directly onto Arthur's shoulder. Arthur looked at this silly bird. Its body was covered with smooth feathers and was dark black. Its beak was dark gray and looked very sharp. The bird's head is particularly large, and its eyes are also very large. It's this look in its eyes that, has a clear sense of stupidity, and it feels like a husky among birds. In the bird's claw, Arthur found a key. The shape of the head was a complex pattern, composed of multiple zigzag lines. The handle was an elongated cylinder with exquisite patterns engraved on the surface. After taking off the key and playing with it for a while, Arthur couldn't remember where the key was. He planned to go to school to find Harry and ask if it was the key to the Gringotts treasure house. The bird and the key didn't appear to be from the Muggle world at first glance, and he didn't understand who in the magical world would give him these things. However, Arthur was not in a hurry. The other party would definitely come to him in the future. After breakfast, Arthur returned to the room and fed Tom some fruit. Tom was the name Arthur gave his bird. Arthur planned to open the book in advance, picked up standard spells, elementary, and started flipping through it. Fluorescence. Arthur raised his wand and tapped it lightly, and the tip of the wand emitted a bright light. It was successful. It was much easier than expected. His talent in spells was indeed very high. Now he was inexplicably looking forward to the black magic at 11 o'clock. 1 month later, on the night of August 30th. Host, Arthur Green. Occupation, Wizard. Inventory, none. Talents, max 10. Charms, 8, gifted. Potions, 7, regarded as a gift. Transformation, 9, excellent talent. Divination, 1, time is good, time is not good. Black magic, 11, Dementors will tremble when they see you. Magic spells, lighting spell, LV2, 1.04%, lock opening spell, LV1, 82.7%, repair spell, LV2, 0.7%, silent spell, LV1, 72.4%, fire spell, LV.1, 91.6%, obstruction curse, LV1, 83.3%, levitation curse, LV.1, 89.1%, crushing curse, LV.1, 92.8%, disarming curse, LV.1, 95.5%, upside down golden bell, LV.1, 98.5%, front teeth matching stick, LV.1, 76.2%. Number of card draws, 21. Become the most powerful and terrifying Dark Lord. For a whole month, except for eating and going to the bathroom, Arthur hardly left the door, studying magic theory and liver curses desperately. Most of the magic spells are easy for Arthur to get started with, and he almost always succeeds at the first try, but it is more difficult to continue to improve, even if Arthur is very talented in magic spells, such as lighting spells and repair spells. Reached LV.2. Compared with the first level, the lighting spell becomes brighter and illuminates a wider range. The repairing spell is similar and has a better repair effect than the first level. However, these two spells still cannot be cast silently. I guess the level is still not enough, and I still need liver. Apart from the magic spells, the biggest gain is the number of card draws. I endured it for a month and have been saving up until now. Arthur messed up his hair with his hands. My turn, draw a card. For a moment, flowers bloomed on the virtual screen, fireworks were displayed, and there was a card drawing animation, but soon, the exciting scene dissipated. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage. Madame Malkin's store temperature robe, Hogwarts Student Edition. BB's multi-flavored beans, booger flavor. Thank you for your patronage. Arthur's vision went dark, and he was slapped 10 times in a row. He just got a skin. After taking a deep breath, Arthur felt that he was going to do another 10 consecutive strokes. The first 10 strokes might be for padding. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage. Constipation Ren, why are you worried about the mysterious man? You should be concerned about constipation Ren, the feeling of constipation tortures Chinese people. Thank you for your patronage. Wizard card, Cliana. After using it, the success rate of preparing a potion next time increases by 60%. Thank you for your patronage. Rita Skeeter's camera, the person photographed after using it will spit sweetness on anyone. OFKST, FK, convex. A total of 20 draws in a row, except for the wizard card, which is somewhat useful, the others are all garbage. Arthur felt that his blood pressure was a little high. He looked at the system panel and saw that he had the last shot left and he was pumping. Single extraction miracle. Chapter 6, Hogwarts Express. A golden light flashed, and the gold was withdrawn. The corners of Arthur's mouth raised slightly, and he was indeed the European Emperor. Free talent points, +1. Arthur thought about it for a while. He could no longer add points to the black magic talent. Arthur wanted to add the potions and charms talents, as well as the transfiguration talent. Now Arthur had difficulty choosing. After thinking about it, he finally decided to wait. I'll keep it for now and go to Hogwarts for a few days to attend classes. I'll tell you which ones you need to add at that time. As for divination, it was no longer within his scope of consideration. Adding just a little bit didn't feel like the improvement was as big as the previous ones, and Arthur always felt that divination was unreliable. Early the next morning, after Arthur got up and packed up, he refused to see his mother off and dragged the box to King's Cross Station in London alone. Is it this wall? Arthur stood between platform 9 and platform 10, not sure. He planned to wait and see if any wizard family came in or out. Hurry up, Fred. Not far away, there were 6 or 7 people walking in the direction of Arthur. They all had red hair. They seemed to be a family. The leader was a fat lady holding a little girl. Arthur recognized them. They must be the Weasley family. The one with black hair and round glasses next to them must be the famous Harry Potter. "Hello, ma'am." Arthur said hello to them. "Hello, kid, are you a freshman this year too?" he asked, looking at Arthur's outfit and carrying an unknown bird. "Yes ma'am, I can't find platform 934. "Don't worry kid, this is the wall. Fred, you go in first." I saw Fred pushing the luggage cart towards the wall and disappeared with a swipe. "Thank you, ma'am, I understand, I'm really sorry to trouble you." What a polite boy. This is Ron and this is Harry. They are both freshmen this year. Maybe you will be assigned to the same house. "Hello, Ron, Harry." After greeting them, Arthur took the first step and came to platform 934. There is a steam train parked next to the platform with Hogwarts Express 5972 written on it. After Arthur cast a levitating spell on his luggage, he dragged his luggage onto the train and found a window seat in the unmanned carriage to sit down. It would take some time to get to Hogwarts. Arthur felt that he could not waste his time and should make full use of it, so he took out a copy of Defense Against the Dark Arts and started reading. "Hello, is the seat occupied? Can I sit in this seat?" Just as Arthur was immersed in the world of magic, a gentle voice sounded in his ears. The speaker was a little girl with long, fluffy, thick brown hair. "Of course, I'm the only one in this carriage. You can sit wherever you want, right?" "Thank you. My name is Hermione Granger, and I am a new student this year." After thanking Hermione, she sat down opposite Arthur. "Arthur Green, also a freshman this year." Arthur introduced himself with a smile. "What you were reading just now was the book for this year's Defense Against the Dark Arts class. Are you from a wizarding family?" "No, my parents should be muggles. I have never met my parents, so I don't know if they are wizards. I grew up in an orphanage." "Sorry, Arthur, I didn't know you were an orphan." "It's okay, Hermione, aren't we friends?" Arthur said with a smile, matching his golden hair, as warm as the winter sun. "Yes, Arthur, we are friends. You don't know how excited I was when I received the Hogwarts notice. My parents didn't believe in the existence of magic. Later, a Professor McGonagall came to my house and talked to me." Parents explain. Hermione suddenly became very happy and became eloquent. A series of words came out of her mouth, which made Arthur feel a little overwhelmed. "Let me tell you Arthur, I almost memorized the first grade textbook. You know we come from a Muggle family and are definitely much behind students from wizarding families. I was very anxious at the beginning, until I felt better after I memorized the textbook, but I didn't know if it was enough. I'm about the same, but not as good as you. I just learned a few spells from the textbook." "Really? It's the same as me. I also practiced according to it during the summer vacation." I don't know whether it was because Hermione and she both came from Muggle families or because she loved learning just like her, but Hermione suddenly started talking and talked non-stop, as if she wanted to tell Arthur all her thoughts and feelings. Arthur didn't have any impatience, he kept listening to her with a smile, and would ask a few small questions from time to time. After Hermione answered them, he would show his original or thoughtful expression. The two chatted for a long time until a simple-looking boy walked in. "Is there still room in this carriage?" "Yes, please sit down." "Thank you, my name is Neville Longbottom, and I am a freshman this year. We are all, this is Hermione and I am Arthur." Arthur introduced the two of them to Neville. The three of them were all freshmen this year, so they talked about similar topics and quickly became familiar with each other. While chatting, the three of them talked about the branch. I think Hogwarts, as a prestigious school, must decide its branch through the entrance exam," Hermione said confidently. "But my grandma told me that it is decided based on talent. I feel like I will be dropped out of school if I am so stupid." Completely different from Hermione's confidence, Neville's character even has a bit of low self-esteem, which is also related to his childhood experience. "Neville, don't be so pessimistic. The fact that you received the admission notice from Hogwarts means that you are also qualified to become a wizard. Hogwarts never expels students casually." Arthur and Hermione were standing aside, comforted. "Which college do you all want to go to?" "I want to go to Gryffindor most. I heard from my grandma that both my parents graduated from Gryffindor. Anyway, it doesn't matter if they are not Slytherins. I heard that Slytherins are all dark wizards. I also want to go to Gryffindor. The headmaster of Hogwarts graduated from Gryffindor." Hermione continued. "I don't care. Every college has its own characteristics. It doesn't matter which one you go to. It's all about studying anyway. But Hermione, I think you should be suitable for Ravenclaw." After hearing this, Hermione felt it made sense, nodded, and then discussed the curse with Arthur again. Hermione also showed Arthur a few spells she had learned on her own over the summer. The same goes for Arthur. Neville was a little stunned as he watched, always feeling that these two people would become some big shots in the future. Chapter 7 Hello Brother Yan, Goodbye Brother Yan. "Arthur, Hermione, have you seen my toad?" Neville suddenly realized that he seemed to have lost the toad and started rummaging around in the carriage. "Who is Leaf?" "It's the toad I raised. I often forget where I put it." Neville became anxious as he spoke. "Arthur, let's help Neville search in the carriage." Seeing Neville's anxious little round face turn red, Hermione pulled Arthur up and helped him search. The three of them rummaged through the carriage, searching every corner, but still could not find the toad. "Neville, did you take Leaf on the train?" Hermione was a little doubtful. "I forgot whether I brought it with me. My memory has been bad since I was a child. Now that Lifo has been lost, Grandma will definitely be very disappointed in me." "Don't worry, Leaf is a magical animal and won't be lost. He must have hidden himself. Maybe he will appear automatically when he gets to school." Arthur knew the plot and said calmly, and then sat back down. "Don't worry, Neville, your toad is a magical animal. It might just be hiding and playing with you. Let's go to other carriages and ask." Seeing that Neville still looked uneasy, Hermione decided to take him out to look for him. "Arthur, come with us to find it. The three of you, hurry up, please." Hermione grabbed Arthur's hand, her eyes full of anticipation and pleading. As a gentleman, how could Arthur refuse a girl? Okay, let's split up. Hermione, you take Neville to the car at the back, and I'll go to the car in front to ask, and we'll finally meet here." Seeing that Arthur agreed to her request, Hermione happily led Neville to the back car in a hurry. "Hello, have you seen a toad?" Arthur asked from car to car, but couldn't find it. However, the quality of students at Hogwarts is really different. Those who answered him politely were told to leave directly. Especially some of the Slytherin students. Haha, Arthur remembered the faces of those people. It would be best for them not to be alone in the next few years in school. I walked around the first half of the carriage and returned to my own carriage after finding nothing. Slytherin is the best college in Hogwarts, and you guys don't deserve to be in it. As soon as Arthur entered the car, he saw Hermione quarreling with several people. The leader was a boy with light blonde hair, who looked arrogant, followed by his two followers, one fat and one thin. "Arthur, you're back." "Hermione, what happened?" "It's okay, there are some annoying people in the carriage." After saying that, he looked at those people with disgust. "Who are you? What are you doing in our carriage?" "Draco Malfoy." The boy paused deliberately and emphasized his last name. Behind me are Gregory Goyle and Vincent Crabbe. What about you? Malfoy asked, seeing Arthur's extraordinary temperament. Arthur Green. Malfoy recalled it, but he didn't remember any Green family. He turned around and asked the two young followers, and they both shook their heads. Which family are you from? Can't you see? I was born into a Muggle family. Do you know what the name Malfoy stands for? Hearing Arthur's answer, Malfoy became more arrogant and his eyes became contemptuous. I don't know, and I don't want to know. Please get out. Hermione didn't want to worry about this now, she just wanted to get rid of these annoying people as soon as possible. It turned out to be two mudbloods. Hearing that Hermione didn't know the Malfoy family, she joked with the two people behind her in an arrogant tone. What did you just say? Arthur's eyes suddenly turned cold and he looked at the people who were still laughing. Why, do you still want to hit me? I said she and you are both mud, ah. Before he could finish speaking, Arthur punched him in the nose. Malfoy screamed and squatted on the ground, his nose bleeding uncontrollably. Seeing that the two followers hadn't reacted yet, he cursed loudly, Goyle, Crabbe, you two idiots, didn't you see that I was beaten? Why don't you do it quickly? When the two young followers at the back heard the boss's curse, they reacted, rolled up their sleeves, clenched their fists and punched Arthur. Total petrification. Total petrification. Arthur was a bit ungrateful, so he took out his wand and fired 2 petrification spells to immobilize Goyle and Crabbe. When Malfoy saw the two followers being petrified, he got up and turned around to run away. The upside-down golden bell. Arthur shook his wand slightly, and a green light rushed out from the tip of the wand. After barely running 2 steps, Malfoy was knocked upside down by Arthur's spell and hung upside down. What do you want to do? Malfoy said in horror. Don't come over here. Arthur came to Malfoy with a smile and said, Don't be afraid, classmate. I'm just here to see if you have a nosebleed. I'm just helping you stop the bleeding. You're done. My father is the school director. I will definitely ask him to find Dumbledore to expel you. And that guy next to you. With a bang, Arthur punched Malfoy in the stomach. What did you just say? I didn't hear clearly. Cough, cough. At this time, Malfoy almost fainted, drooling and crying a lot. Student Malfoy, I heard that you are a noble? That noble must be very respectable, right? Malfoy, you don't want others to know what happened today. Of course. What about your nose? I'm angry, you are helping me stop the bleeding. While he stammered, tears flowed out unsatisfactorily. Isn't this right? We are all from the same school. We should help each other. Malfoy wiped his tears and nodded wildly. After breaking the petrifying spell on Goyle and Crabbe, and giving them both a kick, he broke the spell on Malfoy. The 3 of them helped each other and left. Arthur, are you really okay with this? Will they tell the professor and fire you? Let it go, Hermione, who asked them to call you a mudblood? This is a very vicious curse in the wizarding world. Next time someone calls you like this, just take out your wand or come to me and I will help you avenge you. Well, Arthur, you're so kind. Looking at Arthur's handsome face and gentle smile, Hermione's face turned slightly red. Where's Neville? Arthur scanned around and found no trace of Neville. We found Harry Potter in the back compartment. Neville was chatting with them. I couldn't chat with them, so I came back first. Hermione met several new students from wizarding families today, and found that they were not as good as she thought. They were rude. Compared with this, Arthur was better. He also liked reading as much as she did. It was perfect. Has he found his toad? Well, maybe he forgot again. Arthur, Hermione. Chapter 8 Hogwarts. The two of them were not affected by Malfoy's incident, and the rest of their chat was still very enjoyable. "Arthur, the two magic spells you just used made it so beautiful. I still can't achieve your level of silky smoothness. Can you teach me?" "Of course, which one do you want to learn?" "The golden clock hangs upside down. Next time I see Malfoy bullying someone, I will ask him to reminisce." "Tom, it's time to eat." Arthur smiled and shouted out the car window. After a while, a plump bird with jet black feathers flew in from outside, stood on the table, then stared at Arthur with intelligent eyes, then looked at Hermione, and screamed quack. As if asking, where is its food? Was it eaten by the two-legged beast opposite? "Is this your pet?" Hermione looked at the fat owl-sized bird on the table and wanted to reach out and touch it. Tom pecked Hermione's hand with his mouth, startling her, then flew up and stood on Arthur's shoulder, looking extremely cold. "Hermione, are you okay?" Arthur asked Hermione concernedly, and then lightly hit Tom on the head. "I'm fine, I was just scared." "What kind of bird is this, Arthur?" "Is it a crow?" Arthur explained to Hermione, "I don't know. The one someone gave me looks a bit like a crow, but it shouldn't be. I call it Tom. It should also be a magical animal. It can simply understand what I say." As he spoke, Tom nuzzled Arthur's ear again. "Don't make trouble, do me a favor first, and I'll give you extra food later." After saying that, Arthur picked up Tom and placed him on the table in front of the two of them. "Come on, Hermione, don't you want to practice spells? Just use Tom." Hermione hesitated, fearing she might hurt Tom. "Don't worry, Tom's magic resistance is very high, and ordinary magic spells can't hurt it at all. I often use it to practice magic spells during the summer vacation." "But Hermione still hesitated. Hanging the golden bell upside down, Arthur didn't say anything more and just used a magic spell to hang Tom up. Tom didn't scream or struggle, as if he was used to it. "If you feel a little sorry, feed it more food later. Maybe it will come to you when you practice magic spells next time." Hermione. Now Hermione knew why Arthur's bird was so fat. Time passed by inadvertently. After practicing the spell, Hermione took out some fruit and prepared to feed it to Tom as his reward. Tom looked back at Arthur, and after seeing him nod, he ate Hermione's fruit. Taking this opportunity, Hermione finally touched Arthur's bird. "Its feathers are so beautiful. Although they look black, they will appear dark blue or purple in the sunlight. They are so beautiful," Hermione exclaimed. After Tom finished eating, he stopped flying out and kept squatting on the table. Perhaps because he had fed it fruit, Tom's attitude towards Hermione was much better, and Hermione even picked it up without struggling. Woo, woo, woo. As the train whistle sounded, Arthur obviously felt the speed slow down. He glanced out the window and saw that it was getting dark. He said to Hermione, "We have to change into robes. We are almost at Hogwarts." After the two packed up their belongings, they heard the train's beep. "The train will arrive at the terminal, Hogwarts, in 5 minutes. Passengers, please put your luggage on the train. A house elf will deliver your luggage to your dormitory." After hearing the beep, opening the window and letting Tom go, Arthur protected Hermione and followed the crowd of people out of the train. As soon as she got off the train and came to the platform, Hermione patted Arthur's arm, pointed not far away and said, "Look, that's Harry Potter." Looking in the direction Hermione was pointing, she saw that Neville was there too. "Let's go there too." "Hi Arthur, we meet again." Seeing Arthur and Hermione walking over, Harry greeted them warmly. "Arthur, do you know each other?" Hermione looked at Arthur with some confusion. "I couldn't find platform 934 at the train station. Fortunately, Ron's mother helped me." After speaking, he turned to Harry and Ron and said, "No introduction is needed, we all know each other." After a few people chatted briefly, a loud voice appeared, "First-year students. First-year students, come over here." From what he heard, he was a tall man, more than 3 meters tall, with broad shoulders, a straight waist, a messy and rough beard, and his hair was like a wild jungle, looking like a tall oak tree. Hagrid saw Harry and greeted him. "Hi, Harry, long time no see, how are you?" Harry was a little excited. "Hi, Hagrid, long time no see. I'm fine. I want to introduce you to you. This is Hagrid. Hagrid, these are my friends, these two are Ron and Neville, and these are Arthur and Hermione. Hello, boys, you redhead must be from the Weasley family. I hope you don't like playing pranks like your two brothers." After greeting each other, everyone followed Hagrid and stumbled along the mountain road to the lake. It was dark beside the lake. Only an oil lamp in Hagrid's hand was shining, so he couldn't see his surroundings clearly. Luminescent, Hermione took out her wand and used a lighting spell to illuminate the area around the two of them. "Nice charm." Hermione smiled proudly after hearing Arthur's compliment, and then, fluorescence flash, Arthur took out his wand and cast a lighting spell to light up the entire lakeside pier. Everyone around looked at Arthur dumbfounded. "How did you do it, Arthur? I feel like you are more powerful than my two BD brothers," Ron said in shock. "Thanks, Arthur." Hagrid waved to Arthur and thanked him. "While you're under the lighting spell, hurry up and get on the boat. Remember, there should be no more than 4 people in each boat. Hurry, after everyone gets on the boat. Let's set off." "How on earth did you do that, Arthur?" On the boat, Hermione still felt incredible. "Only if you are familiar with it." Hagrid sat in a boat, at the front, and the other boats followed him. Soon, everyone saw the brightly lit castle on the cliff opposite the lake. It was solemn and mysterious, and its huge figure looked even more majestic under the moonlight. Everyone was shocked and speechless by this magnificent castle, even Arthur was mentally prepared in advance. After everyone arrived at the shore, they got off the boat and followed Hagrid, walking quickly along the stairs and arriving at the gate of the castle. A tall witch wearing square glasses and dark green robes stood in front of the door with a serious expression, waiting. Chapter 9 Branch. "Professor McGonagall, all this year's freshmen are here, I leave them to you." "Well, thank you for your hard work, Hagrid," McGonagall said. "Welcome to Hogwarts. Okay, you will go through these doors later and be with your classmates, but before that, you must first be sorted into a house and confirm which house you are in. There is Ravenclaw, S.I. Litlin. Lifu." Before Professor McGonagall finished speaking, Neville rushed out from behind the student team and found his pet toad at the professor's feet. "I'm sorry," Neville said, a little embarrassed. "Mag. Okay, the sorting ceremony will start in a few minutes. I suggest you tidy up while waiting." After that, he turned and entered the hall. "Is that Professor McGonagall just now? He looks very stern." Arthur asked Hermione, standing aside. "Yes, it was this professor who came to my house to explain to my parents." "Arthur, do you know how to sort them?" "I'm a little nervous now." The little witch in front of her no longer had the pride and confidence she had on the train, but instead felt a little uneasy. Arthur comforted, "Don't worry, Hermione, we are all freshmen, the school will not make things difficult for us, and Hermione, you are already very good." Hermione relaxed a little after hearing Arthur's comfort. "I heard from my father that sorting is very easy for pure-blood wizards, but very difficult for half-bloods and muggles. The school will do anything to prevent them from enrolling." The Malfoys and others leaning against the wall were loudly discussing the sorting. "Don't listen to Malfoy's nonsense. I heard from my brothers that they have to pass a test. Fred said that it will hurt us a lot, but I think they are lying to me. They always like to joke." Ron said a little worriedly. After hearing Ron's words, Harry also felt a little nervous. Neville, who had just found Leaf, also joined the discussion. I heard from my grandma that she wanted to fight a dark wizard. The winner will enter Gryffindor, and the loser will enter Slytherin and become a dark wizard. I have also heard from my family that Slytherins are all dark wizards. Ron spoke from the side. I'm a little worried now, Arthur. Hermione became nervous again after hearing their busy discussion. Don't listen to their nonsense. It must be all lies. The person who came to pick me up in Diagon Alley was Professor Dumbledore. I asked him. My family will not tell the new students how to sort the houses before they start school. This is a tradition in the wizarding world. After hearing what Dumbledore said, Hermione's nervous mood finally relaxed. Are you Harry Potter? I am Draco Malfoy. These two are Gregory Goyle and Vincent Crabbe, Malfoy said to Harry with a haughty look. Ron looked at him and couldn't help laughing. Do you think my name is funny? I don't even have to ask what your name is. You have red hair and an old robe. It must be from the Weasley family. Malfoy was a little angry. He had heard everything Ron said about Slytherin just now. Potter, you will find that some magician families are superior to others. Don't make friends with shady people. I can help you. Malfoy didn't forget to glare at Ron after he finished speaking. I think I can tell the good from the bad myself, thank you. Harry refused directly. After hearing the answer, Malfoy was a little stunned. Potter rejected him. Arthur watched this interesting scene from the side and thought to himself, it's okay Malfoy, you two are still young now, and you will be considered childhood sweethearts who grew up together in the future. There will be so many years ahead, so take your time. Malfoy, this is England, you still have a chance. Seeing Malfoy standing still, Ron couldn't help but mock, hey, why are you still standing here? Didn't you see Potter reject you? Malfoy had never been so angry before, except for Arthur, and this time in such a public place, it made him even more angry, and he saw several people about to fight. Professor McGonagall walked out of the door, holding a list in his hand. Seeing the two groups of people on the scene at war with each other, he said with a serious face, what are you doing? Do you want to put them in solitary confinement before they are sorted? You will regret this, Potter. Malfoy reluctantly said harsh words, looked at Potter again, then turned around and came to the side of Goyle and Crabbe. Seeing Malfoy walking over with an ugly expression, Gower said, Boss, did Potter reject you? Do you want us to teach you a lesson? Shut up. Mag glanced at it and said, everything is ready, line up, follow me. The freshmen followed Mag through the gate and arrived at the auditorium. The auditorium is large in scale. As soon as you enter the gate, you can see the long tables of 4 houses. Different houses have different decoration colors. Gryffindor is red and gold, Slytherin is green and silver, and Ravenclaw is blue and gold, Hufflepuff is yellow and black. At the end of the long table, there is a high platform, which is where the Sorting Hat and teachers eat. Especially the ceiling of the auditorium, with the candles floating in the air, looks like a lit night sky, which is extremely beautiful. Look at the sky, the ceiling is made by magic. I read it in the history of Hogwarts. Hermione whispered in Arthur's ear as they walked. The freshmen were taken to the end of the long table. In front of it was a high platform with a 4-cornered stool and a dirty, broken wizard's hat with a large patch on the side. The amazing thing is that after the freshmen lined up, the hat actually started to sing. But never judge a book by its cover. If you can find a more beautiful hat than mine, I can put myself. To be honest, the singing was not very good, but everyone still gave Mr. Hat a lot of respect and gave him applause. It seems that this is the hat used by the sorting house, just put it on. Hermione breathed a sigh of relief and whispered to Arthur. Arthur spoke into Hermione's ear and said gloomily, have you ever thought about something more terrifying? This is a magic hat with thoughts. It may read your memory, spread your embarrassing stories around, and even control you. The brain. Hermione. Professor McGonagall opened a list in her hand and said, "Students who have reported their names, come forward. I will put the sorting hat on your head and then sort them." Hannah Abbott. A little girl with 2 golden braids came up and sat on the 4-corner stool. Mag put the sorting hat on her head. Hufflepuff, shouted Hat. The students at the long Hufflepuff table on the right applauded Hannah, cheering and welcoming her to Hufflepuff. Chapter 10 I Am Such a Good Wizard. Harry Potter. As Harry walked forward, there was a sudden buzz and murmur in the dining room. Potter, is he calling Potter? Is it the Harry Potter who defeated you-know-who? Gryffindor. We discussed it for a while, and finally, under Harry's strong intention, we went to Gryffindor. As soon as the sorting hat fell, the Gryffindor table burst into cheers and applause. After taking off the sorting hat, as soon as Harry walked to the Gryffindor table, the prefect Percy stood up impatiently and held Harry's hand tightly, and the students around him also gathered around. The Weasley twin brothers were even more exaggerated. They jumped up and shouted, "We have Potter! Gryffindor has Potter!" Gryffindor welcomed Harry Potter like a hero, and even McGonagall's serious face relaxed a bit. The complete opposite of Gryffindor was Slytherin, who all looked at the cheers of these wild lions with cold eyes. Hermione Granger. Hermione walked slowly to the stool, put the hat on her head with some hesitation, and then the two started chatting quietly. More than 10 minutes later. "Gryffindor," shouted the hat. Hermione took off her hat and walked quickly to the Gryffindor table, not forgetting to glare at Arthur before leaving. Arthur Green. Finally it was his turn. Arthur walked quickly to the 4-corner stool, and then picked up the dirty sorting hat with 2 fingers of his left hand with a look of disgust, a little hesitantly. "Hey, kid, can you quickly put me on your head? Do you know this is very rude?" The sorting hat said angrily. "Sorry, Mr. Hat, you are really dirty." Arthur hesitated and put the sorting hat on his head. "Is it you, the bad boy, and that little witch who said that I can control the brain and read memories?" Arthur quickly explained, "Sorry, sir, I was just joking." Before the sorting hat could speak, Arthur asked again, "Sir, how did you accurately sort the students into the 4 houses? Did you make any mistakes?" Hearing that Arthur was actually questioning himself, the sorting hat quickly countered, "I am the Hat of Godric Gryffindor, the founder of Gryffindor. Don't underestimate me. I am a magic hat full of intelligence and thoughtfulness. You can see what talents the students have." Arthur deliberately acted exaggeratedly and said, "Sir, you are really powerful. Are you a product of alchemy?" Arthur thought to himself, if he had this kind of technology, among other things, he would have a thoughtful, talking inflatable doll. No, it would be a figure. Is there a clue? So, the 4 founders of Hogwarts poured their thoughts into me, so that I can sort students into various houses based on their talents and qualities. Mr. Hat, now that you have your own mind, do you feel uncomfortable being trapped in a hat? Have you ever thought about using alchemy to create a body, and then... Stop, 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 do you want to listen to what you are saying? Before Arthur could finish speaking, he was interrupted by the sorting hat. "It's your sorting time, boy. Students like you should go to Slytherin. You will become a great person, and Slytherin will help you to achieve glory." Arthur felt that the sorting hat contained himself, and defended it. No, 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 I think Gryffindor is suitable for me. People I know think that I am a brave, courageous, and generous person. Sorting hat, that's because they were deceived by you. You are good at pretending. You should go to Slytherin." "Arthur. Mr. Hat, I think you misunderstood me." Half an hour later, Arthur was still explaining to the sorting hat, not noticing the passage of time at all. People from the 4 major colleges were already a little impatient and were all discussing Arthur. At the Gryffindor table, Harry asked Hermione next to him, "Hermione, do you know what happened?" Hermione shook her head. She was a little worried and regretted that she told the Sorting Hat that Arthur was scaring her. If Arthur really couldn't get into school because of this, she would have to go to the professor to explain it clearly. Arthur didn't know what was happening next, and was still trying to flatter the Sorting Hat, trying to get some useful information out of it. "Sir, you are so awesome. It's a pity that there is only one Sorting Hat in the world. Do you sometimes feel lonely?" "Oh, you still understand me, kid. It's just a pity that my alchemy books could have been locked in the forbidden book area. It's shipped, and it's in the forbidden book section." Arthur was a little excited. He just had some jujubes and no jujubes. Unexpectedly, he really gained something. It would be great if he could steal this book. After remembering the contents, he would if you put it back without being caught. It doesn't count as stealing. "Mr. Hat, what did you just say? I didn't hear what you said just now. Why is there no sound?" "Mr. Hat, are you okay?" Arthur asked in a friendly tone. "Slytherin, Slytherin. McGonagall, little McGonagall, hurry up, get me away from this little BD," the Sorting Hat shouted out of control. Everyone in the hall, whether students or teachers, were startled by the Sorting Hat's sudden scream. This had never happened before. The same was true for Mag. After reacting, she quickly took the Sorting Hat away from Arthur's head, and then looked at Arthur with incredible eyes. Arthur touched his nose in embarrassment and explained, "I just had a chat with him." Seeing that the Sorting Hat was still cursing, Arthur quickly ran to the Slytherin table. After sitting down, Arthur glanced around the table and all the people were staring at him. "Mr. Green, which family are you from?" asked a senior next to Arthur. Arthur shrugged and replied nonchalantly, "Muggle family." The eyes of the people at the table changed. Some were curious, some were indifferent, and some were unkind. Arthur was a little helpless. It was all the Sorting Hat's fault. How could he, a good student who was upright, brave, honest, wise, knowledgeable, far-sighted, curious, and liked to delve into things, be a Slytherin? How can you learn magic well with Slytherin and other insects? It seems that my life in the next few years will be wonderful. At the Gryffindor table, Hermione and others were also discussing this matter. How did Arthur get sorted into Slytherin? It must be the Sorting Hat's fault. Harry said. Hermione also said with some worry, "Yes, Arthur is a Muggle-born and will definitely be bullied in Slytherin. No, I must find the professor and ask him to move Arthur to Gryffindor." Chapter 11. It is our duty to rebuild the glory of Slytherin. At this time, poor Arthur was lying on the long Slytherin table, looking at the professor's table. The greasy man in black robes on the far left must be their Dean Snape, and Arthur stared at him. For a long time, Snape didn't notice, and his eyes never left the Gryffindor table. The professor next to him dressed up like an Indianison must be Quirrell, a consumable for this year's defense against the dark arts class. Arthur recognized several professors with distinctive features, such as the short Phileas Flitwick, the Professor of Charms, and the serious Professor McGonagall. The other professors could only wait until class started. Acknowledged. "Boy, do you know that Slytherin belongs to our pure-blood academy? How did you, a lowly Muggle who is not even a half-blood, get in?" Before the sorting was over, the troublemaker came. The person who spoke was a senior student with a strong build. The expression on his face was exactly the same as the Malfoy that Arthur saw for the first time. Oh, Arthur swore he really wanted to pick up the cutlery and fork on the table, pull out this guy's tongue, nail the fork to the table, and make you bark. Arthur pointed at the professor's table. Snape stared at them with cold eyes. The senior students' expressions changed and they sat back down. As usual, Arthur took note of this person's appearance, and just like the people he met on the train who made rude remarks to him, he was ready to find an opportunity to trap them when they were alone. I hope these people are not members of the college Quidditch team, otherwise Arthur will definitely break their legs the night before the game. Arthur doesn't care about the House Cup or Slytherin glory. He is the glory. The Sorting Hat's mood stabilized a little, and the sorting continued, but the students behind him were asked not to talk to the Sorting Hat. Arthur sighed for a while. The Sorting Hat regarded him as a close friend, and he regarded it as a prince. I have to find a chance to have a good chat with it next time and apologize. This hat has always been in the principal's office. What if the Sorting Hat has a grudge and always talks bad about me in front of Dumbledore? It will not damage myself in the eyes of the principal. Image. Not long after, Malfoy came to the Slytherin table, glanced at Arthur on the table, and said hello to him. Malfoy did not sit next to Arthur. On the contrary, he sat a little far away. He was still a little afraid of Arthur. "Hey, Malfoy, how do you say hello to that muggle, Mudblood?" When he heard the word Mudblood, Malfoy suddenly looked up at Arthur and found that he was looking at him with a smile, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. "President Philip, how can you say such a thing? We are all from the same college and should support and help each other. I, Malfoy, am not a person who discriminates against blood." When the surrounding Slytherin students saw Malfoy's current appearance, they felt as if they had seen a ghost. "Is this your line?" Malfoy wiped the sweat from his head, ignored the looks of the people around him, and thought to himself, "You will also see ghosts in the future." The subsequent sorting ceremony went smoothly, and there were no more unexpected incidents. The sorting was completed soon. Professor McGonagall rolled up the parchment, picked up the Sorting Hat and left. Albus Dumbledore stood up. He looked at the students with a smile on his face and stretched out his arms to them. Nothing seemed to make him happier than seeing the students gathered together. "Welcome," he said, "welcome to Hogwarts to start the new school year. Before the banquet begins, I would like to say a few words. That is, idiot. Crying nose. Residue. Screw it." Most people didn't understand what Dumbledore meant, but everyone clapped and cheered. After cheering, the food appeared on the table. Arthur had never seen so many things on the table at once: roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, steaks, boiled potatoes, baked potatoes, fried potatoes, etc. Potato chips, Yorkshire pudding, pea shoots, carrots, gravy, tomato sauce. Arthur was indeed a little hungry. He picked up his knife and fork and began to eat slowly. His movements looked noble and elegant. Coupled with his handsome appearance, the female Slytherin students around him put down their knives and forks and watched quietly. After the meal, Professor Dumbledore stood up again. The auditorium also returned to silence. "Oh, now that all the students have eaten and drank enough, I want to tell you some more precautions. The Forbidden Forest next to the school prohibits any students from entering, and the same applies to senior students. If Hagrid finds out, he will definitely be imprisoned. Furthermore, our administrator, Mr. Filch, also asked me to remind everyone not to cast magic in the corridors between classes. Finally, I would like to remind all students that if you do not want to suffer an accident and die in pain, please do not enter the corridor on the right side of the 4th floor. I would like to add that no student is allowed to enter the restricted book area of the library, whether they are seniors or juniors. Once caught entering, they will be severely punished." After listening to Dumbledore's words, Arthur felt that he was not warning the students, but giving Harry the first-year guide to Hogwarts. What does the last sentence mean? Is it to prevent Harry from running around? Or is it to prevent the Weasley twins from getting in and causing trouble? It can't be to prevent me, right? Now, before everyone goes to bed, let's sing the school song together. Dumbledore said loudly. Dumbledore waved his wand lightly, and a brilliant light flew out from the tip of the wand, and lines of lyrics appeared above the dining table. Everyone choose a tune you like, prepare it, and sing it. Dumbledore said. Hogwarts, Hogwarts. Please give us knowledge. No matter we are bald old people. Or the child who broke his knee after falling. Everyone sang with their own tune, and the Weasley twin brothers even sang with the melody of the funeral march. The combination of many voices was simply torturing the ears. Music, said Dumbledore, wiping his eyes, is more charming than anything we do here. Well, it's bedtime now, and night walks are not allowed at Hogwarts. Classmates, please go back to the dormitories of your respective colleges. The first-year students in Slytherin followed their prefect Gemma Farley through the noisy crowd, walked out of the auditorium, and headed to the lounge. In the corridor, Arthur also met Hermione. She wanted to drag Arthur to find the professor, explain the situation, and change him to another college. It would be best to go to Gryffindor. Arthur rejected Hermione, comforted her, sent her to the Gryffindor team, and then returned to follow the Slytherin freshmen to the lounge below the castle. Chapter 12 Night Attack. Arthur followed the team at the end and kept going down the stairs. He soon reached the castle basement and came to a wet stone wall. Remember, the entrance door is hidden in the stone wall. This week's password is, Pure Blood. The password changes every 2 weeks. Prefect Gemma Farley said to the new students. After passing through the stone door, we came to Slytherin's Lounge, a translucent lounge located at the bottom of the lake, Black Lake. You can often see some giant octopuses or strange creatures through the windows. The walls are made of black Gothic marble, and the ceiling is a transparent semicircle carved with crystal, from which you can see the sparkling waves above your head. A green light was tied to a chain on the ceiling. There is a fireplace indoors with a beautifully carved mantel and some carved chairs next to it. After arriving in the lounge, Prefect Gemma Farley stood high and began her speech. Congratulations. I am Gemma Farley, Prefect, and welcome to Slytherin House. First, let me explain some of the myths. You may have heard some rumors about Slytherin House that we are all dark wizard. He talked a lot, all about pure blood, but Arthur didn't pay much attention to it. After the speech, other students introduced themselves to each other and said which family they came from. Arthur ignored them and went back to the dormitory alone. Pushing open the bedroom door, he found a single room with luxurious decoration. It was a pity that Arthur didn't like it here. It was humid, cold, and dark, and it was probably very cold in winter. I wonder if he would get rheumatism after a long time. The most important thing is that Tom can't fly in unless he stands on his shoulders and brings him in. Arthur thought for a while and could only ask Hermione to take more care of him. After packing up his belongings and checking every corner of the room, Arthur locked the door and found no problem. He washed up and lay down on the bed. After a while, he fell asleep. In the middle of the night, Arthur was awakened by a sound of voices. You two, please step softly and don't wake him up. What are you afraid of? We're just a freshman. Even if we broke in like this, that guy would probably be trembling with fear. Hurry up, Philly, use the unlocking spell to open the door quickly. I can't wait to see that mudblood cry. The Ilaho cave opens. With a pop sound, the door was opened and he walked in. Standing in the darkness, Arthur saw clearly the people coming. There were 3 people in total. One of them was the senior guy who gave him trouble when he was sorted. The other 2 were unknown to Arthur. Still sleeping on the bed, the big man whispered to the other 2, and then the big man jumped up and pressed towards Arthur on the bed. There was a click sound, and the bedboard made a snapping sound. The big man realized that something was wrong. He opened the quilt and saw that there was only one pillow. He realized that something was wrong. Expelliarmus, a spell sounded in the darkness, and the only student with a wand was disarmed. Total petrification. Total petrification. Shattered to pieces. Arthur quickly released 3 spells, and after controlling 2 of them, he cast a crushing spell on the last big man. This was the first time Arthur had cast an offensive spell on someone. Whisper. After quickly closing the door, he cast a whispering spell on the big man who was wailing in pain, so that the screams in the room would not be heard from outside later. Arthur was very angry. He couldn't imagine that if he didn't wake up tonight and didn't prepare early, his ribs would definitely be broken if the big man hit him like this. Arthur became more and more angry as he thought about it. A crushing spell was given to his right hand. After seeing him struggling in pain in the air, with his mouth wide open but unable to make any sound, his mood improved a little. Arthur decided to give these 3 a hard lesson tonight, and also warned the other Slytherin students that he was not someone to be trifled with. He rummaged through the suitcase and took out a baseball bat. This was specially prepared by Arthur, and now it comes in handy. Seeing Arthur walking towards him with a wand in his left hand and a baseball bat in his right hand with a friendly smile on his face, he was struggling more and more fiercely. "Don't be afraid, it won't hurt." Seeing his frightened look, Arthur said comfortingly. It was a pity that they couldn't hear their screams. If conditions allowed, Arthur really wished can be heard by all the students in Slytherin. With a bang, a baseball bat hit him in the chest. The big man instinctively blocked it with his uninjured left hand. There was a click and he was interrupted by the baseball bat. "Hey, what are you trying to block? I just wanted to break a few of your ribs. It's fine now. My left hand is also broken." Ignoring his plea for mercy, Arthur raised the baseball bat again and hit him on the chest. This time it hit him firmly on the chest. Arthur also heard the sound of broken bones, and the big man fainted. Passed. Seeing this situation, Arthur nodded, satisfied, then turned his head and looked at the other 2 people who were petrified. After the petrification spell was released, the 2 burst into tears and their legs were weak from fear. After the upside-down golden bell hung the 2 people up, Arthur did not leave them alone and asked about the situation of the 3 of them. "Mr. Green, I was wrong. Please forgive me. It was GE and Gray who threatened us," Philly said while crying. "These 2 people, one is named Philly, the other is named Jack, and the big one who fainted is named Gray." Now the 2 of them put all the blame on Gray, but it was of no use because Arthur had no intention of letting them go. "Don't be afraid, why are you still crying and moaning? Look at Gray. He has 3 broken limbs. Doesn't he have no objection at all now?" Seeing that Arthur had no intention of letting them go, the 2 yelled for help, but Arthur didn't tolerate him and hit them in the mouth with a baseball bat, causing all their front teeth to fall out. Arthur looked at Philly and Jack with cold eyes and ordered, "Swallow it." The 2 of them were frightened and did as Arthur said. Seeing that the 2 of them were so obedient, Arthur's friendly smile reappeared on his face. The next step was the same process, first whispering a curse, and then putting on a baseball bat. Although the wand was convenient, it was not as good as hitting someone with a baseball bat. Arthur didn't play favorites, it was all the same. 2 arms, 1 leg, and a few ribs wouldn't kill anyone, but they would make them remember him and be afraid of him, so they would consciously take a detour when they see Arthur in the future. Arthur wiped the sweat from his head, glanced at the 3 unconscious people, took off all their clothes, leaving nothing behind, and then threw them into the college's common room, letting everyone Slytherin students take a good look. As for whether the 3 of them would complain to Snape, Arthur had nothing to fear, as long as the 3 of them still had the guts. Arthur was pretty good at what he did, and he didn't kill any of them. With the level of the school nurse, Mrs. Poppy Pomfret, she could only lie down and suffer for a few days at most. Moreover, they were the ones who came to trouble him first, and they were in his dormitory. It was self-defense. When Dumbledore saw them, he would at most say that he had acted harshly. Chapter 13 People in Hogwarts are afraid of campus violence. Dong, dong, dong. A knock on the door woke Arthur up. He glanced at the alarm clock on the bedside table and saw that it was only 5 in the morning. Arthur got up and cursed angrily, Didn't you see it's only 5 o'clock? When he opened the door, he saw Malfoy standing at the door neatly dressed. He said to him with a somewhat fearful look, "Several Slytherin seniors are injured." Professor Snape asked everyone to gather in the common room. Malfoy just came from the lounge and saw the miserable situation of the 3 people. He was sure that it was Arthur who did it. Last night, Philly told him that he would teach Arthur a lesson, but this morning the 3 of them ended up like this. Looks like it. After Arthur got dressed, he briefly washed himself. Seeing that Arthur was not in a hurry, Malfoy didn't dare to rush him, so he had to go back to the common room. 20 minutes later, Arthur finally finished cleaning up and walked slowly to the common room. He found that the place was already full of people. When everyone in Slytherin saw Arthur arriving, they stared at him and gave way to him. A path was opened. Snape stood at the front, scanning everyone with cold eyes. When he saw Arthur coming over, he asked, "Mr. Green, why are you so slow? Didn't you sleep well last night?" Snape's hoarse voice came. "No, Professor, Slytherin's dormitory is great, and the bed is very comfortable. If Malfoy hadn't woken me up, I would still be asleep." Arthur answered Snape sincerely, and the meaning was obvious. "I slept very well last night and didn't know anything." Snape didn't speak. He stared at Arthur with cold eyes for a while and then asked everyone to go back to their dormitories. Arthur grabbed Malfoy, pretended not to know what was going on, and asked him with confusion. "Malfoy, last night, 3 senior students were attacked and lay injured in the common room. Their clothes were also stripped." "Really? Are the injuries serious? Where is the murderer? Has the murderer been caught?" Malfoy looked at Arthur's innocent expression and felt a little dazed. Did he remember wrongly last night? Philly and the others didn't go to Arthur? After returning to the dormitory, Arthur was no longer sleepy, picked up a few books, and went to have breakfast. When we arrived at the dining hall, there were already a lot of people. Among them, the Ravenclaw table had the most people, and the Gryffindors the least. I don't know if it was Snape's reason for Slytherin, but there were also many people there. Arthur did not go to the Slytherin table and found Hermione, the book king, in the Gryffindor area. At this time, she was holding a spoon in her left hand and still flipping through books in her right hand. "Hey, good morning, Hermione." Seeing that the person coming was Arthur, Hermione put down her spoon and book and asked Arthur, "Arthur, were you okay last night? I just heard from some Slytherin students that your dormitory was attacked by someone last night. Are you okay?" "Don't worry, the people injured last night were some seniors. I only found out this morning. It's good that you're fine. The injuries of those seniors must have been caused by competing with others for some evil spell. Maybe it was black magic. I heard from my roommate that Slytherins are all dark wizards. Arthur, stay away from them. A little. Arthur. When Hermione and Arthur were having breakfast, Tom flew in and dived directly into Arthur's oatmeal bowl. Poor Tom, he must be starving because he didn't eat last night. Arthur touched Tom, who was busy eating, and said to Hermione, "Hermione, I have to ask you something. My dormitory is at the bottom of the lake, and Tom can't fly in. From now on, I will ask you to take care of Tom." Hermione patted her chest and promised, "Leave it to me." "Hey, look, there's a little snake here." Arthur looked back and saw that they were the Weasley twin brothers. Arthur had never expected that they could get up so early. "Good morning, Fred George." "Good morning, Arthur and Hermione, are you two dating?" "And Arthur, I'm George." Hermione blushed slightly when she heard what the twins said, while Arthur was thick-skinned and completely ignored their jokes. "Why did you two get up so early? It's not even 7 o'clock yet." The twins didn't answer Arthur's question. They came over, put their arms around Arthur's neck, and asked, "Arthur, did something happen to Slytherin last night? Do you have any inside information about us? Let me tell you, I'll give you a stinky egg. This is a prank prop made by our Weasley brothers. Believe me, Arthur, you will fall in love with it after using it. Of course, if you want to use it next time, you have to pay. As a friend, I will give you a 30% discount." The corner of Arthur's mouth twitched slightly. It turned out that they had heard about the attack on a Slytherin student and got up early to inquire about the news. "I don't know. As you know, as a Muggle-born wizard, he is very marginalized in Slytherin, and he won't tell me any news." "Indeed, but Arthur, how did you get sorted into Slytherin?" The twins nodded and asked curiously. "Maybe I offended the Sorting Hat," Arthur replied with some embarrassment. Upon hearing the news, the twins became excited and asked Arthur how he did it. There was no other way. Arthur could only say that it was kept secret, and it was Snape's request. Arthur hoped that Snape could scare the twins and stop them from prying. When the twins heard what Snape said, they became even more excited. They thought it was some scandal about Snape, so they pestered Arthur to ask. In the end, Arthur had no choice but to ask them to find Malfoy and tell them that Malfoy knew everything. He was Snape's godson. If he didn't tell, they could use Stinky Egg and he would definitely speak. Seeing that Arthur was so strict with his mouth, the twins had no choice but to go to Malfoy. Before leaving, they told Arthur that if they needed prank props, they would contact them and they would guarantee good quality and low price. After sending the twins away, Hermione smiled and asked Arthur, "Is it okay for you to bully Malfoy like this? Will he cause trouble for you? Do you want me to help you teach him a lesson?" "Arthur? It's okay, Hermione, violence can't solve the problem. Malfoy and I have reconciled, and he won't cause trouble for me. Thank you for your hard work, horse manure." Hermione thought about it and realized that she was right. Arthur was not a violent person. "Arthur, I heard from my roommate that the library at Hogwarts is very big and has a lot of books. It's on the second floor of the castle. Let's go to the library to read after class." Arthur nodded and agreed. He was still thinking about the alchemy in the forbidden book area. "Arthur, Professor Snape wants you to go to his office, right now." The speaker was Prefect Gemma Farley. She looked for Arthur in the Slytherin dining area but could not find him. She did not expect to find him in the Gryffindor area, let alone that he was actually with a Gryffindor. What a happy little witch chatting. "I understand, Prefect. Hermione, I'm leaving now. I'll find you in the classroom later. Tom will leave your favor for the time being." After Arthur said goodbye to Hermione, he went to Snape's office. Chapter 14 Transfiguration Lesson. "Professor Snape, are you looking for me?" Arthur knocked on the door and entered Snape's office, where he found Snape brewing the potion. When he heard Arthur coming in, he ignored him. Just like that, Arthur stood aside and watched Snape brew the potion. Half an hour later, Snape finished his potion and turned to look at Arthur, who was stretching his head. "Do you know what this potion is?" Snape asked hoarsely. Arthur replied, "It's a bone spirit that can make bones grow back. It seems that Mr. Green has read through the potions textbook in advance and is a little clever and knows some basic knowledge." Arthur listened to Snape's words, but felt more like he was mocking him. Snape continued to speak in a sinister tone. "Arthur Green, a freshman who just entered school, actually seriously injured 3 senior students. After they woke up, they didn't dare to say that you did it. It's really amazing. Professor, I didn't know you." Before Arthur could finish his words, Snape interrupted him. "Shut up, Arthur, put away your innocent face. Do you think no one will know if those three idiots don't tell you? Stop being clever. Professor Snape, you should know that I am from a Muggle family. I just entered school yesterday and my branch is still Slytherin. Arthur didn't say anything else. Snape could understand. Don't you think your attack was too harsh? All the bones in the three people's hands were shattered, their sternums were broken, and even their teeth. Stop, 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 Professor Snape, I hope you can understand that from the time I entered this office until now, I have never said that I did it, so I don't know about these things. You misunderstood me. This time it was Arthur who interrupted Snape and refused to admit what happened last night. If you can, use legilimency. Arthur, you should know that some people and some things don't need evidence. Of course, but you're not that kind of person, Professor, are you? Snape. I don't want this to happen again, do you understand? Of course, Professor, I am not a violent person. I don't know about other Slytherin students. Now, immediately, get out of my office. Snape had never lost his temper like this because of a student, and Arthur was the first one. I wish you a happy mood, Professor. As soon as Arthur left the door of Snape's office, he heard the sound of glass falling to the ground. It seemed that Snape was in a bad mood. I hope no students fell into his hands today. Not long after Arthur left, Malfoy ran to Snape and complained, Godfather, I was. Roll. Hi, Hermione, I'm back. After Arthur came out of Snape's office, he went straight to the Transfiguration classroom. The first class this morning was Transfiguration. Slytherin and Gryffindor were in class together. It was still early, and Hermione was the only one in the classroom, but there was a cat standing on the podium, which must be Professor McGonagall. Arthur, why did it take so long? Does Professor Snape have anything to do with you? It's okay, Professor Snape just cares about how I slept last night. After explaining to Hermione, he came to the podium. Arthur looked at the cat in front of him and tried to ask, Professor McGonagall, is that you? With a swish sound, the cat on the table disappeared, and Mag appeared in front of Arthur and Hermione. Hermione was startled by this scene. Arthur, how did you find me? Mag asked curiously. I'm just guessing. The book on transfiguration I read said that there is an advanced transfiguration, animagus, which can turn the wizard himself into an animal. You are very smart, Arthur. In so many years, you are the first freshman to take the initiative to discover me. Mag admired Arthur's wisdom, but he didn't know what his talent for transfiguration was. Professor McGonagall, at what grade do we need to be in order to learn the animagus? Hermione asked curiously from the side. Miss Granger, animagus is a very advanced form of transformation, which requires at least 5th or 6th grade, and not everyone can learn it. Professor McGonagall, if a student has a particularly good talent for transfiguration, can he learn it in advance? Arthur couldn't wait until then and asked impatiently. After all, the system showed that his talent for transfiguration was not low. After hearing what Arthur said, Professor McGonagall thought for a moment. She was also afraid that Arthur would practice animagus in private, and said, if Mr. Green's transformation technique meets my requirements, you can come to me and I will teach you. Nemagus, of course, and Miss Granger as well. Remember, never practice animagus in private. It is very dangerous. If an accident occurs, it will turn into a half-human, half-animal monster. Arthur and Hermione nodded, remembered Professor McGonagall's words, and returned to their seats. As time passed, students from the two colleges entered the classroom one after another. Students from different colleges sat clearly in two different areas of the classroom. Arthur did the same. He came to the Slytherin area and sat down in a seat near the front where no one was around. Harry and Ron set the right time and entered the classroom. They glanced at the podium and breathed a sigh of relief when they didn't see McGonagall. Fortunately, Professor McGonagall hasn't arrived yet, Ron said happily. When he saw the cat on the podium, he thought it was someone's pet and reached out to touch it. Suddenly, the cat turned into Professor McGonagall, and Ron jumped up in fright. "Mr. Weasley, are you here to perform a sideshow? And why are you two here just now? Check the time. If you do this again next time, I will turn one of you into a pocket watch." The Slytherin students around him laughed loudly. The opponent was a Gryffindor student, and it was the famous Harry Potter who was unlucky. They really enjoyed watching it. "Sorry, Professor, we're lost." Harry wanted to explain a few more things. Mag said sternly, "Then turn it into a map. Now go back to your seats. You don't need a map anymore, right? Before going to class, I want to make it clear to you that Transfiguration is the most dangerous and difficult course among all your first-year courses. Therefore, no playing is allowed in my class. If I find out, I will personally kick you out of the classroom and never let you in again." Before the class started, Professor McGonagall gave everyone a warning. The effect was very good. The classroom, which had been playful just now, suddenly became quiet. Professor McGonagall was very satisfied with the effect. "Put away your wands. I will give you a chance to practice later. Take out all your textbooks on the basic theory of Transfiguration and learn the basic theory first." Chapter 15 Hogwarts Library. Remember the duration of the transformation spell. It is determined based on the concentration of the caster, the strength of the mana and the size of the changed object. Arthur tried Transfiguration at the orphanage during his summer vacation. He wanted to turn a small wooden stick into a needle. After trying for several days, only the two ends of the wooden stick showed a metallic color, and the deformation did not last long before it changed again. "Gone back?" Arthur asked. "Professor McGonagall, what would happen if I turned something else, like poison, into food?" Hearing Arthur's words, Mag looked at him in surprise and replied, "The magic world has a basic principle of deformation, Gamp's basic deformation law. Wizards can deform objects, but there are 5 major exceptions, one of which is food. Transfiguration cannot turn anything other than edible into food, not even Professor Dumbledore." "Professor McGonagall, what about people turning into animals? Will they be conscious? What is the difference between transfiguration of people into animals and animagus?" "There is no intelligence or consciousness when turning a person into an animal. Unless you use magic to control him, he will only act according to the instinct of the animal. This is the biggest difference with the animagus." After hearing Professor McGonagall's answer, Arthur nodded and sat back. "Listen, if you are not sure, please don't use transformation, especially experiments such as turning people into animals, if you don't want to be expelled." Professor McGonagall looked at the students in their seats who were discussing and whispering, and warned again. "Now, give each of you a match. Your task is to try your best to turn the match into a needle before this class ends." After saying that, Professor McGonagall waved the wand in his hand, and it appeared on every seat. A match. "From now on, remember what I said, you must increase your concentration, think about how the needle will change, and don't wave the wand at an excessive angle." Professor McGonagall walked off the podium and shuttled between the desks. Check on students. Arthur was the same, trying to picture a needle in his mind, a needle without any patterns. Then he waved the magic wand at the match, and for a moment, Arthur felt a strange magic appear. It was the same as when he practiced before, but this time he felt it more clearly. Under the wand, Arthur Match's appearance slowly changed, his whole body slowly turned silvery white, and one end became sharp. After it was completed, Arthur took it in his hand and looked at it. It was the same size and thickness as a match, with a sharp end and a silver-white metallic luster all over. Looking at the match in his hand, Arthur thought that although it was a bit ugly, it should, maybe, be considered a success. Mr. Green, the swing of the wand is wrong. You need to raise it slightly. Don't think too much when you transform. I'll give you another match and try again. Mag looked at the object that looked like a needle in Arthur's hand and was a little surprised. She didn't expect that Arthur's talent for transfiguration was so good. Although he didn't turn a match into a needle, it wasn't much worse. After getting the matches again, Arthur continued the previous operation, but this time he was more focused. The match changed under the wand significantly faster than the last time. The body of the match soon turned silver white, its body began to become thinner, and one end became sharper, and soon turned into a needle. Arthur breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time he heard the system prompt, Transformation LV1, 3.9%. Seeing the needle on Arthur's table, McGonagall walked over quickly, picked up the needle, took a look at it, then raised the needle and said loudly, "Look, everyone, look, Mr. Green has finished, Slytherin plus 5 point. Arthur, your talent for transfiguration is really high. If you are interested in transfiguration, you can come to my office to see me if you have any questions in the future." At this time, Professor McGonagall changed from his usual seriousness and said with a smile on his face. Smiled and said to Arthur, "Of course, Professor McGonagall, I am very interested in transfiguration. I tried to practice it during the summer vacation, but it didn't work. If I have any questions in the future, I will definitely ask you for advice." After hearing Arthur's words, Mag nodded with some appreciation, returned to his previous serious look, and went to check on the other students. Before leaving, Professor McGonagall told Arthur that he could try adding some patterns on the needle. Arthur tried it, and there were indeed some patterns on the smooth surface of the needle, but they were not what Arthur wanted. Until the end of class, Arthur reluctantly added a snake pattern to the needle. After class, Hermione quickly walked over, sat down next to Arthur, picked up the patterned needle, and said to Arthur, "Arthur, you are so awesome. You're great too, Hermione. Didn't Professor McGonagall give you extra points too?" Hermione was a little embarrassed. During the entire transfiguration class, only one end of her match became a little rounder, which was far inferior to Arthur's transfiguration. Seeing that she was still struggling with the transfiguration class, Arthur pulled Hermione up and said, "Let's go. You can practice transfiguration slowly. Didn't we make an appointment to go to the library?" After hearing this, Hermione stopped thinking about transfiguration and left the classroom with Arthur. The library of Hogwarts is located on the second floor of the castle. The walls are made up of thousands of bookshelves, each filled with a variety of books. They are classified according to themes and subjects and arranged in an orderly manner, forming a huge knowledge grid. Between the bookshelves, narrow walkways pass through them, like a maze. In the center of the library is a huge reading table with soft and bright lights that illuminate the entire space. Surrounding the reading table are ancient wooden chairs carved with magical runes, providing students with a comfortable and focused reading environment. Deep in the library, there is a door leading to the mysterious forbidden book area. Some books that are considered too dangerous or too precious are stored there, and only specific students and professors can enter. As soon as the two entered the library, Hermione was attracted by the huge stone arch, which was carved with various complex magical symbols and ancient incantations. "Arthur, do you know what the text is?" Arthur looked carefully at the characters on the door, shook his head and said, "I'm not sure. It seems to be rune characters. We can look it up in the library later. You two, in the library, no loud noises are allowed, please pay attention to your voices." "Arthur," Hermione apologized quickly. "I am the administrator of the Hogwarts Library. You can call me MRS. Pants. In addition to no fighting, graffiti, and destruction of books are strictly prohibited in the library. If you are discovered by me, I will definitely send you to Filch's. Also, please note that the library closes at 8 o'clock in the evening, so please pay attention to the reading time. Chapter 16 Agreement. Let's find a place to sit down first. After Hermione and Arthur walked around, they found 2 empty seats and sat down. Hermione took out the Transfiguration homework assigned by McGonagall and started writing. Arthur was a little absent-minded now. He planned to go to the depths of the library and wander around the restricted area first. When he came to the iron door of the forbidden book area, he approached the door and felt a cold wind blowing, as if to warn him. Arthur tried it, but the door was locked. He didn't know if the unlocking spell could open it. "What are you doing here? This is a restricted book area. Students are not allowed to enter without a warrant from the professor." Before Arthur could try, Mrs. Pants' stern warning came over. "Madam, I was looking for a book and accidentally came here. I saw it was locked by an iron door, so I was curious and came over to take a look." Arthur explained. "What book are you looking for?" "Basic Alchemy, madam. On the 3rd row outside, on the 2nd bookshelf from the left." Mrs. Pants thought for a while and told Arthur the location of the books. "I know, thank you, Mrs. Pants." After thanking him, Arthur turned and left. On the way back, Arthur was thinking about how to enter the restricted book area. During the day, Mrs. Pants was there, so he couldn't enter at all, and the door was locked. The unlocking spell might not open it, but it would open it. Arthur didn't believe Dumbledore would. Without any other protection, maybe Dumbledore would appear as soon as he entered and take advantage of him. Harry was able to enter the restricted book area at that time, which was entirely intentional by Dumbledore. He was even afraid that Harry would not be able to open the locking spell, so he did not even lock the door to the restricted book area. Arthur decided to try secretly in the library tonight. If it didn't work, Arthur would wait for Harry to have the invisibility cloak and ask him to bring him in. If that doesn't work, the only option is to find a way to get the warrant from the professor. Snape definitely couldn't do it. Arthur had just offended him. Arthur was a little worried in potions class. If he dared to ask Snape for a warrant, he would probably have to send Arthur to the principal's office. Other professors not to mention, but Lockhart should have a chance next year. After finding Basic Alchemy, Arthur returned to Hermione with the book and started reading. "Come on Hermione, it's noon, let's go eat first, we have classes in the afternoon, let's come over in the evening." Hermione nodded, packed up her things and left with Arthur. Password: pile of cockroaches. "Albus, what happened to that child?" Snape asked Dumbledore in a hoarse voice as soon as he entered the principal's office. Dumbledore slowly turned around, saw Snape and said, "Severus, welcome to my place, would you like a piece of toffee?" "Answer my question, Albus." The previous principals hanging on the wall seemed to have heard the noise, and they all leaned over with their ears open. "Child, what child? Is it Dumbledore's child? Is it an illegitimate child? Does Grindelwald know? Which child are you talking about?" "Harry." "Don't worry, Severus, Harry will be safe at Hogwarts." Snape sneered and said, "You know who I'm talking about, Albus. You brought that child back from the orphanage yourself. Don't tell me that you two have nothing to do with each other." Hearing Snape's words, Dumbledore sighed and replied, "Arthur is different from Harry, Snape. Do you know what he did last night? 3 senior students were seriously injured by him. Even Voldemort was not as cruel as him when he first entered school. Dumbledore, you still want to train another Dark Lord. Severus, Arthur is different from Tom back then. You can't be biased against him." Snape said coldly, "I will not be biased against any student." Dumbledore nodded and said, "I can't interfere with Arthur's choice, I can only guide it, and the same goes for you Severus, he is also your student. Then why let him come to Slytherin and Gryffindor? Isn't Hufflepuff bad? Dumbledore shook his head and said, I have said, I cannot interfere with Arthur's choice. He is different from Harry. Although he is assigned to a house by the Sorting Hat, if Arthur disagrees, he will definitely explain the situation to the professor. Asked for reclassification, but he didn't do it even once. After hearing Dumbledore's words, Snape looked at the Sorting Hat and asked, what happened during the sorting? The Sorting Hat was a little flustered and said, yeah, it's nothing. I just chatted with that kid for a while. Snape snorted coldly and looked at Dumbledore. Tell Severus, you will know sooner or later anyway. Hearing this, the Sorting Hat seemed to be relieved and said, that little BD took advantage of the sorting process to try to trick me and use sweet words to cheat, come and sneak attacks. I, 1,000-year-old old hat, simply don't know how to use martial arts. Duh. What exactly did you say to him? Also, I didn't reveal anything major. I just accidentally revealed that forbidden alchemy of the human body was in the restricted section of the library. Well, I accidentally revealed it. You can't blame me for that. Everyone, it's really that the boy is so cunning. After hearing the Sorting Hat's words, Snape said to Dumbledore, so, you want me to watch him and not let him enter the restricted area? No, Arthur has already been there once this morning, but he just didn't go in. Snape heard Dumbledore's words and asked with some confusion, what if he goes in and gets the forbidden alchemy? Facing Snape's question, Dumbledore stood up, came to the window, looked at the scenery outside, and after pondering for a while, he replied, I won't stop it. As I said before, if he really it's decided that I won't interfere. Why? Aren't you afraid that another Voldemort will appear, even scarier than him? Because of a promise, a very ridiculous promise, but some things force me to abide by this promise. Dumbledore said thoughtfully. Snape still refused to give up and warned, you will regret it, Dumbledore. Don't forget your age, others are just afraid of you who were powerful before. No, Severus, there are some things that I know better than anyone else, and Arthur is different from Tom. He has lived in a loving environment since he was a child, and he also knows what love is. As long as we guide him correctly, he will not become the Dark Lord. Huh, I hope you're right. After saying that, he turned around and left the principal's office. Wait, Severus, after returning to Slytherin, you should pay attention to see if anyone approaches Arthur too enthusiastically and find out the origins of these people. Snape was a little surprised and asked, what do you mean? Dumbledore is still the Riddler, saying, this world is no longer what we knew. Just like that, Snape left the principal's office with a head full of questions. Dumbledore, has something happened? The portraits of the previous principals in the principal's room couldn't help but ask when they saw Dumbledore's worried look. Dumbledore shook his head and did not answer their questions. He just said to himself, I hope you are right. Chapter 17 Slytherins are all scum, except Arthur. Arthur, Hermione, where did you two go after class? Why didn't you see anyone? Harry asked curiously as he watched the two people walking towards him and Ron holding several books. We both went to the library to read. After hearing this, Ron complained, there must be something wrong with the Sorting Hat. You two should go to Ravenclaw. After dinner, Arthur declined Hermione's invitation to go to the library to do homework and returned to the Slytherin common room. As soon as he entered the lounge, there were unkind glances and whispers from all around. Before Arthur could enter the dormitory, two senior students walked towards him with contemptuous eyes. Boy, was it you who injured Feli and the others last night? Arthur replied, no. After hearing the answer, the senior student who asked Arthur said to his companions, look, I just said it couldn't be this lowly mudblood. He's only in the first grade. How could it be possible? Ah! Before he could finish speaking, Arthur kicked him in the crotch. Before the chicken could fly, the egg must have been broken. He hoped that the school infirmary could save his children and grandchildren. When the other person saw his companion lying on the ground, holding his crotch and wailing loudly, he immediately took out his wand and pointed it at Arthur, but Arthur was faster. Expelliarmus. Shattered to pieces. Arthur's two magic spells directly made him lose the ability to resist, and he and his companions were on the ground wailing in pain. Seeing how decisive and ruthless Arthur was, the other senior Slytherin students around him didn't even come forward to help. They weren't stupid, and being defeated by a first-year student was already a disgrace to the family. In Slytherin, if they want to cause trouble for a Muggle-born student, there are many ways to do it. Going up to fight Arthur in a duel is something only a fool would do. "What are you doing standing here?" A cold voice came from the back of the crowd. After everyone in Slytherin heard it, they knew that their dean was coming, so they consciously made way for a good show. He came to the front of the crowd, looked at Arthur holding the wand in his right hand and the two senior students who fell to the ground, and yelled at Arthur, "Arthur Green, you!" Arthur saw Snape coming, and before he could finish speaking, he immediately put away his wand, pretended to be weak, pitiful, and helpless, and said in a tone that was about to cry, "Professor Snape, you finally came, and they called me a lowly mudblood and wanted to do something to me." "Professor, is mudblood a bad word? What does it mean? Professor Snape, do you understand?" When Arthur spoke, he specially emphasized the word mudblood. The effect was that Snape's anger increased visibly, and his eyes stared fiercely at the two people lying on the ground. "What are you idiots doing standing here? Why don't you quickly send these two more useless idiots to the infirmary? Arthur, follow me to the office." The other Slytherin students around felt a little confused as to why the professor was scolding them, but seeing Snape's furious look, they didn't dare to say anything, picked up the two wounded and ran away. When Arthur heard Snape's almost broken roar, he knew that those two people were in trouble. Taking advantage of Snape's hatred for the word mudblood, he not only taught those two idiots a lesson, but also disgusted Snape once. Gee, he is so bad. With a bang sound, Snape closed the office door heavily and looked at Arthur with cold eyes. "Mr. Green, from the time you entered school to today, 5 people have entered the school medical department in less than 2 days. You are so awesome." Faced with Snape's eccentricity, Arthur said, "Professor, I'm still a child. Do you know how harmful the word mudblood is to a child who is only 11 and not yet 12 years old?" "Shut up, Arthur Green, you idiot, put away your pathetic look." After scolding, Snape stared at Arthur with cold eyes. Arthur was as if he was being targeted by a poisonous snake in the dark. Although he felt uncomfortable all over, he didn't say anything to irritate Snape. These 2 times have offended him too much, and Arthur will have potions class later. He is afraid that if he continues to offend him again, he will really not be able to walk out of the potions classroom alive. "Listen, Mr. Green, in view of the harm you caused to 2 classmates, you have been given a confinement. Go help Mrs. Pants clean the library on weekend nights. Remember not to use magic." After hearing Snape's words, Arthur immediately became vigilant. No one knew that he was going to the restricted area to steal books, but Dumbledore must know about the Sorting Hat. At this time, he sent himself to the library to clean. "What do you mean, do you want to test yourself?" Seeing the sinister smile on Snape's face, Arthur agreed bravely and decided to cancel his plan to visit the Forbidden Book area tonight. If he was caught, the old bat would be the first to ask for his dismissal. People. Early the next morning, Arthur didn't know why the news spread so quickly. Now almost the entire Hogwarts knew what happened last night and knew that he had sent 2 senior Slytherins into the infirmary. On the way to the auditorium, there were several students from other colleges who greeted me warmly and said what a great job. Arthur really didn't expect that the relationship between Slytherin and other houses would be so bad. "Arthur, you had a fight with a senior classmate, were you not injured?" As soon as Arthur arrived in the Great Hall, Hermione and Harry greeted him. Hermione was the first to speak, asking if she was hurt. After Arthur said no, they came to the Gryffindor table and chatted about what happened last night. "Arthur, you did the right thing. You should teach those arrogant guys a lesson." Arthur's story made Ron's blood boil and he wanted to go up and punch them. Neville said from the side, "Arthur, you have to be careful, my grandma said that Slytherins are not good people." After Hermione heard this, she replied angrily, "Indeed, those Slytherin students look so arrogant, they don't even look like educated people. They actually dare to call Arthur a mudblood. Slytherins are all scum, except Arthur. Arthur, you have to be careful about your headmaster Snape. When I saw him during the last sorting, my scar burned like it was on fire." Harry touched the scar on his head and said to Arthur, "Don't worry, Harry, I assure you that Professor Snape is a good person. Even if you have any trouble, he might help you. Of course, you have to endure his venomous tongue." Harry felt that Arthur must be joking with him. How could Snape help him? Every time he saw Snape, he felt like he was going to kick him out of school. Seeing that Harry didn't believe it, Arthur stopped talking and ate the pumpkin pie in front of him. "Dear Mr. Green, hello. Can I take a moment to speak with you?" Arthur looked back and saw that he was a senior Slytherin student. He asked curiously, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" "Let me introduce myself. I am Trevor Shacklebolt. Mr. Green can just call me Trevor. We are looking for you to get to know you and talk to you about something by the way." "Don't worry, Mr. Green, I won't delay you. Attend class." Chapter 18 Mysterious Senior Sister. Arthur looked at Trevor, a little curious as to who was looking for him, and his attitude was so humble. As far as he knew, Shacklebolt was not a small family, but one of the 28 sacred clans. "Can you tell me who is looking for me?" After Trevor heard Arthur's words, he did not answer him directly and said, "Don't worry, sir, we have no ill intentions towards you. And the location is in the Slytherin common room. Of course, if you are worried, the time and location are fine. The choice is yours." After hearing what Trevor said, Arthur became even more curious and decided to go and see who it was. Before leaving, Arthur was still a little worried and told Hermione that if he didn't arrive before class, he would inform the professor immediately and say that he had been kidnapped by a group of Slytherin seniors. Dong, dong, dong. Arthur followed Trevor Shacklebolt all the way to the Slytherin common room and entered a small room next to it. After a knock on the door, Trevor bent down to salute and said to the room, "Miss Catherine, Mr. Green is here. Come in." A cold voice came from inside the door. After hearing this, Trevor gently opened the door, waved for Arthur to enter, and then closed the door. After Arthur came in alone, he glanced around the room and found that it was a lounge of more than 10 square meters. Apart from him, there was only a young woman sitting on the sofa in the middle, who should be the one Trevor mentioned. Catherine. Arthur looked at the woman named Catherine with some curiosity. She was wearing a white dress, simple and elegant, which perfectly highlighted her figure. Her hands were long and slender, and her elegant movements looked calm and noble. The temperament is cold and mysterious. The blonde hair is as soft as molten gold, the face is as delicate as a sculpture, the eyes are deep blue, quiet and mysterious, the bridge of the nose is high and elegant, the red lips are bright and attractive, the voice is clear and cold, and there is a hint of warmth in the coldness, just like the queen-like appearance coming out of the cold winter makes people want to be close and in awe. This is a private lounge. Arthur was a little surprised that Slytherin actually had such a place. "Welcome, dear Mr. Green, you can call me Catherine." Catherine came to Arthur, knelt down on one knee, took his hand, lowered her head and kissed him. Arthur was stunned for a moment, but when he realized what he was doing, he quickly retracted his hand and took 2 hurried steps back. I have never encountered such a situation in my 2 lives. Looking at Catherine, who was still kneeling on one knee, she asked in a panic, "Who are you and what do you want from me?" "I am Catherine Ferris, a 4th-year Slytherin student." "You'd better stand up first." Looking at Catherine with fiery eyes, Arthur asked, "What on earth do you want to see me for?" Catherine stood up, smiled charmingly at Arthur, and said, "Mr. Green, let's sit down and talk." The 2 came to the sofa in the middle of the lounge and sat down. Catherine said, "Mr. Green, it's no big deal to invite you. I just want to get to know you. If you need anything at Hogwarts, you can come to me anytime." Faced with suddenly looking at Catherine so enthusiastically, Arthur felt a little uneasy. He didn't think it was pie in the sky. "Miss Ferris, it seems like this is the first time we have met, right?" Faced with Arthur's doubts, Catherine said, "But we are the same kind of people, aren't we? We are destined to be companions, Arthur. There is no need to question, as long as you say, this lounge, including everything in the lounge, it's all yours, and this will be your private lounge from now on." After finishing speaking, before Arthur could refute, he suddenly came closer, grabbed Arthur's hand and said, "Arthur, tell me your past stories, such as your birthday, what happened when you were a child." "Hey, Miss Ferris, I don't think we are familiar enough yet, and I don't think we will become companions. Now I have to go to class. Goodbye, Miss Ferris." After saying that, Arthur stood up. He stood up and quickly left the room. Arthur didn't think this was a gentle place. This was a beautiful snake that was greedy for his body. Seeing Arthur leave, Catherine did not stop him, she just bowed her head and sent Arthur off respectfully. After Arthur left, Trevor knocked on the door and walked in. After bowing respectfully, he stood aside and asked, "Miss Catherine, are you sure?" Facing Trevor's question, Catherine shook her head and said, "Not yet, but when I grabbed his hand, I felt his magic power fluctuations. It was very similar, very similar. Let you investigate Arthur Green's date of birth." "Have you found it?" "Not yet. Dumbledore is hiding this matter very closely." "Huh, they're all trash." Trevor heard Catherine's angry words and quickly knelt down. "Get out, inform your family members, and hurry up." Trevor wiped the cold sweat from his head and ran out in a hurry. Catherine was the only one left in the room again. She took out a ring engraved with a mysterious symbol, put it on her ring finger, touched the mark lightly, and said to herself obsessively, "Arthur, we will become my friend, no one can stop your return, not Dumbledore or Grindelwald." After returning to the classroom, Arthur didn't even pay attention to the lecture. He kept thinking about what happened just now. He didn't believe it. He just had 2 fights and injured a few people, and then someone came to act as a dog for you. There is also a problem with his own life experience. I thought it was a coincidence before, but now the more I think about it, the more wrong it becomes. Dumbledore didn't even pick Harry up in person, so how could he come to pick him up from school? He must know about his life experience. Next time he sees him, he will definitely pick him up. Find a way to ask. "Arthur, are you okay? You have been absent-minded since you came back to class. Are you feeling unwell? Do you want me to ask for leave for you?" Hermione stretched out her hand and waved it in front of Arthur's eyes, although Hermione knew Arthur's face. It hadn't been long, but she had never seen Arthur like this. In the past, whether Arthur was helping him teach Malfoy a lesson or telling them that he was fighting with the seniors, no matter what happened, he always looked confident, but now Arthur was frowning. Brows, scowl. Arthur looked at Hermione, who cared about him, and sighed that Hermione was better. How good and innocent she was, unlike Catherine, who could not see through her thoughts at all. Arthur could be sure that she must have other plans for him. Arthur smiled and said to Hermione, "I'm fine, Hermione, let's go to the library together after class." "Yeah." Hermione happily agreed after seeing the Arthur she was familiar with return to her eyes. Chapter 19 Soul-Eating Potion. "Stop, Malfoy, I have something to ask you." At the intersection of the school corridor, Malfoy came out of the auditorium with Goyle and Crabbe. Just as he was about to find trouble with Harry, he heard an disrespectful word, telling him to stop and ask him something. "How dare you talk to yourself like this? Master Malfoy will never allow such an awesome student to exist in Hogwarts." Malfoy was a little annoyed. When he looked back, Arthur was standing by the wall at the corner of the corridor, looking at him expressionlessly. "Hey Arthur, are you still used to living in Hogwarts? If you need anything, just tell me." After changing his face at the speed of light, Malfoy greeted Arthur enthusiastically. Ignoring Malfoy's change of expression, Arthur signaled for him to drive Goyle and Crabbe away and then asked, "Do you know Trevor Shacklebolt?" Hearing Arthur's question, Malfoy breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was not here to cause trouble for him. He thought for a moment and replied, "I know him, a sixth-year Slytherin student, from the Shacklebolt family." "Have you ever heard your father say anything about the Shacklebolt family?" "Anything? The Shacklebolt family has nothing to do with our Malfoy family, and this family is very mysterious now. Once when my father was chatting with others, I eavesdropped and heard that the Shacklebolt family is now allied with several other pure-blood families. No one knows exactly what they are going to do, including my father." After hearing Malfoy's answer, Arthur thought for a while and asked, "Do you know Catherine?" "She is Catherine Fairs, a fourth-year Slytherin." "How do you know her?" "Except for those senior students, Catherine never talks to other students." Malfoy was a little surprised and looked at Arthur with a strange expression. Arthur ignored his question and asked again, "Do you know Catherine? Do you know her origins?" Malfoy shook his head. "I only know that she has a very powerful background, and there are several school directors behind her. As for her origins, only Dumbledore probably knows, after all, he is the principal. My father told me before going to school, it made me think the best way to get close to her is to gain her friendship, but..." Arthur nodded after hearing Malfoy's words. His background was indeed powerful and he had a private lounge. He asked Malfoy a few more questions and left without any useful information. Seeing Arthur leaving, Gore ran over and asked, "Boss, why are you so polite to him?" Hearing Goyle's words, Malfoy angrily cursed, "Shut up, you idiot, Arthur hasn't gone far yet. Why didn't you rush over to talk when he was here just now? Can the three of us beat him? Do you want me to be like that idiot yesterday? Then let's just forget it. Of course we can't just let it go. We'll talk about Arthur later. Let's go, follow me to find Potter's trouble first." In the next few days, Arthur's life at Hogwarts became normal. There were no senior students to trouble him, and Catherine and Trevor disappeared, as if they never existed. Without these worries, Arthur lived a happy and fulfilling life every day. He went to class with Hermione, the little Gryffindor witch, and went to the library and went to the Black Lake together. Of course, sometimes the two of them would argue, and Arthur would not let her go. Needless to say, the result was that Arthur won. There were times when the little witch almost cried because of Arthur. Fortunately, Arthur Rui is very experienced in comforting girls. The only flaw in these days is that Arthur feels like he can meet Snape anytime and anywhere. He meets Snape on the way to class in the morning, when he is reading in the library, and even when Arthur goes to the toilet, he meets Snape. May meet Snape passing by. Arthur didn't care. He would just be a good boy these days, and Harry would start to make trouble soon. He didn't believe that Snape would be able to monitor him with such intensity. Weekends, 8 p.m., Hogwarts Library. After a few days of comfortable life, Arthur almost forgot that he was still in confinement. Damn the old bat, I will definitely give him a big gift for Christmas. Potter's shampoo is good, an old brand, trustworthy. It turns out that you are the student who came here to clean tonight. Please note that you only need to clean this area. Be careful not to damage the books during the cleaning process. Professor Snape has told you that the use of magic is not allowed. Hurry up and hurry up. Mrs. Pants said sternly after seeing Arthur. Seeing Mrs. Pants staring at him not far away, Arthur had to start cleaning honestly. Fortunately, the area was not big, and there was not much dust in the library, so he cleaned it quickly. An hour later, Arthur completed his work. Mrs. Pants, I've finished cleaning. Where are you? Arthur searched around the library, but couldn't find Mrs. Pants. Just when he was confused, there was a sound of footsteps. Arthur thought it was Mrs. Pants who had returned. When he walked forward, he found a man wearing a black robe and a hat on his head. The figure in the purple turban hat is Quirrell. Arthur was so frightened that he hid behind the bookshelf. He didn't forget what was wrapped behind Quirrell's hat. Quirrell didn't find Arthur, but went straight to the restricted area deep in the library. Looking at the forbidden book area with the door open, Arthur also wanted to enter, but he knew that if he entered now, he would be lighting a lamp in the latrine and seeking death. Arthur was a little curious, why was Quirrell in the restricted book area so late? Not long after, there was another sound of footsteps. Arthur was not as reckless as before. After waiting for a while, sure enough, not long after, a man's voice appeared. Quirrell, where are you? Keep your voice down. Quirrell came out of the restricted book area and said to another figure. Don't worry, Dumbledore is not in school today. Our people lured him away. Quirrell ignored the other party's words and said to him, have you brought the things? And can we go to the Forbidden Forest to trade next time? Hogwarts Castle is too dangerous. The other party directly rejected Quirrell's request. No, it can only be traded in the library of Hogwarts. Your master knows the reason. After saying that, he took out a thumb-sized bottle from his jacket pocket and handed it to the other party. Is this the soul-eating potion refined by your organization? Quirrell looked at the grey potion in the bottle and said obsessedly. Of course, but this potion is very precious. It took 13 painful wizard souls to refine such a small bottle, which is only enough for your master to use once. If you still want it, just exchange it for something. And don't forget thank you for our cooperation, Bedbug. After that, he turned and left the library. Quirrell was still looking at the potion obsessively, paying no attention to the other party's curses. Quirrell, remember, drink it at the most critical moment. A hoarse voice came from the back of Quirrell's head. Understood, my master. After saying that, he left the library. Chapter 20 Hagrid's Cabin. After Arthur heard no movement around him, he quietly poked his head out. He seemed to have overheard something big. Who was it that Quirrell was talking to? Arthur remembered the other person's voice. He shouldn't be older by the sound of his voice. Big, maybe a student at Hogwarts. He planned to look for this voice in Hogwarts. There is also that bottle of potion. I have to find a way to find out what kind of potion it is that Voldemort values so much. Mr. Green, are you still there? After a while, another female voice came from the library, which was Mrs. Pants's voice. Arthur did not answer immediately. He glanced quietly and confirmed that it was Mrs. Pants, and then replied, still here, Mrs. Pants. Sorry, Professor McGonagall just asked me for something. I have been out for a while. Have you finished your work? When you are done, go back to the dormitory. After Mrs. P said goodbye, Arthur also left the library. At noon the next day, the Gryffindor table was long. Arthur, are you looking for something? Looking at Arthur, Hermione asked curiously. No, why do you ask that? Then why have you been looking around all morning? Before Arthur could answer, Harry led Ron and Neville to them. Harry asked, Arthur, Hermione and Hagrid invited us to visit his hut after class in the afternoon. Will you go? It's right next to the Forbidden Forest. Arthur looked back at Hermione, saw her nodding and said, Of course, we will go together then. I heard that Hagrid knows a lot about magical animals. I want him to help me look at Tom. He is too fat now. I'm afraid it will get sick. After Harry saw Arthur agree, he said excitedly, Great, let's go together then. Where are you going? Are you going to do something bad? Before Harry could finish his words, a hoarse and cold voice appeared behind everyone. Arthur didn't even need to look. He knew it was Snape from the voice. Then he turned to him and said, Professor, can you stop appearing behind us all the time and then talking suddenly? It will scare people to death. Snape glanced at Arthur, then snorted coldly and said, I will keep a close eye on you. If I catch you doing something bad, I will definitely notify Dumbledore and then expel you, especially you Arthur. Ray Green, don't think that I will be merciful to you just because you are a Slytherin student. After that, he turned and left. Let's go now. Professor Snape is really scary, Neville said after heaving a sigh of relief. The others nodded when they heard Neville's words, but Arthur was the only one smiling. Harry asked him curiously, Arthur, aren't you afraid of Snape? Why should we be afraid of him? He is a professor at Hogwarts. He can only scare us with his words, but he won't do anything to us. What is there to be afraid of? Harry was still a little scared and said, But what if one day we make a mistake? No, 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 Harry, you can't think like that. What you should be thinking about is that as long as I am not caught, I have not made any mistakes. What you should be thinking about is how to avoid being caught, not what punishment you will receive if you are caught. Harry and others were stunned after hearing Arthur's words. Everyone used to tell them that if they did something wrong, they would be punished, but now Arthur told them that if they don't get caught, it doesn't count as doing something bad. Well, it makes sense when you think about it. Several people were thoughtful. They nodded. After seeing Harry and others, Hermione said to Arthur, Hey, Arthur, you can't do this, it will teach them bad things. Arthur thought it was no big deal and comforted Hermione by saying, Don't worry, Harry and the others are old enough to understand. After class in the afternoon, several people followed Harry to a small wooden house on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. There was a stone bow and a pair of rubber galoshes in front of the door. Hagrid, are you there? We are coming. After hearing a beeping and thumping sound inside the wooden house, a furry-looking giant over 3 meters tall opened the door of the wooden house. Welcome, welcome, Harry, and Arthur, Hermione, Ron, and Neville, welcome, come in. After entering the house, Arthur looked at Hagrid's cabin. The interior was very simple and warm. A huge wooden bed occupied a corner of the room. The bed was covered with thick quilts and blankets, which looked very comfortable. In the other corner of the room is an old wooden table, on which are placed some strange items made by Hagrid himself, such as a pipe made of deer antlers and a windmill made of tree branches and bird feathers. There was a row of shotguns and bows hanging on the wall, as well as a row of scary-looking witchcraft paraphernalia. Come and try the rock biscuits I just made for lunch today. After sitting down for a few people, Hagrid took out the biscuits he made to treat them. Arthur tried to break it open with his hands, but without breaking it, he secretly put the biscuit back, picked up the tea in front of him and drank it, and then whispered in Hermione's ear, You can try the special biscuits made by Hagrid, absolutely. It's something you haven't eaten before. Hermione was a little doubtful, so she picked up a piece and bit it. The first time she bit it, It didn't move. Then she bit hard, and her two huge front teeth almost broke. The pain was so painful that Hermione almost cried. Hermione covered her mouth and saw Arthur grinning. Knowing that she had been deceived, she angrily stretched out her hand and pinched Arthur's arm at a 180-degree angle. Arthur took a breath and apologized to her. Coaxed for a while before giving up. Harry and others on the side also picked up the biscuits and bit into them. Like Hermione, their teeth were almost chipped. At this time, a black hound came in, and Hagrid introduced, "This is the hound I raised. I call it Yaya. Thanks to it in the Forbidden Forest, otherwise I really wouldn't be able to catch the Weasley twin brothers." Hearing Hagrid talk about the Weasley twins, Ron smiled awkwardly. A few people just sat together and started chatting. Harry soon talked about Snape. He felt that Snape was malicious to him and always made trouble for him. After Hagrid comforted Harry, Ron talked about the theft of Gringotts again. Hagrid was asked by Harry and wanted to change the subject. When he saw Arthur playing with Fangya, he said, "Arthur, where is your pet? Let me see it. What kind of bird is it?" After hearing Hagrid's words, Arthur stood up and shouted out the door, "Tom." After a while, a fat black bird stumbled into Arthur's arms, almost knocking him down. Arthur carried Tom to Hagrid and asked him to help him find out what kind of bird Tom was. Hagrid looked at Tom over and over again, shook his head and said, "Arthur, I'm sorry, I don't know what kind of bird this is. It has a body like a crow, but its eyes are not the same, and even if it is a crow with the blood of magical animals, definitely not as smart as Tom." Chapter 21 Potions Class. Arthur was also a little surprised when he heard Hagrid's words. He originally thought that Tom was just a relatively rare bird species, but now it seems that Tom's origin and species are both problematic. Alas, Arthur is used to it. After all, there are too many mysteries around him. "Arthur, if you don't mind, I can write a letter to Professor Newt Scamander and he will definitely know." Hermione heard Hagrid's words and said excitedly, "Oh my God, Hagrid, is that Professor Newt Scamander, the expert on the protection of magical creatures?" Harry and Ron were a little confused as to why Hermione was so excited. Ron asked, "Is he famous?" Hermione glared at him and explained, "Can you go back and look at your first-year textbooks? If you had read it, you wouldn't have asked such a stupid question. The book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is about Newt. Written by Professor Scamander." Harry, Ron, Neville. "Arthur, thank you so much, Hagrid. Do you want me to take Tom to take a picture and send it to Professor Newt Scamander with the letter?" Hagrid shook his hand and said, "Don't bother, Arthur. I'll just tell Scamander about Tom's characteristics in the letter. He will definitely know it. Believe me, Arthur, maybe Scamander will still know it. Come find you at Hogwarts. Gah." Tom broke free from Hagrid's hand, pecked him a few times, spread his wings and fluttered twice, and stood on Arthur's shoulders again. Arthur knocked Tom on the head and cursed, "Damn it, Tom, you've gained weight again. My shoulders can hardly bear your weight." Time came to the evening, and after saying goodbye to Hagrid, they returned to Hogwarts. Arthur did not give Tom to Hermione this time because he decided to help Tom lose weight and took him back to his dormitory. Speaking of which, this is Tom's first time here, but judging from the way it flies around, he should be able to get used to it. The time came to Friday this week, and today was a dangerous day for both Arthur and Harry, because there was potions class in the morning. Bad news, the potions professor is Snape. Good news, Harry Potter is here too. After getting up early and freshening up, Arthur took Tom to the dining hall, took breakfast from Hermione, and started eating. Hermione glanced at the time and urged Arthur, "Arthur, hurry up and hurry up. Snape's class is in the morning, so don't be late." After hearing Hermione's words, Arthur nodded, then looked at the oats in the bowl. He really didn't have much appetite, so he took a few bites and then dragged Hermione to the classroom. The potion class is held in an underground classroom. The walls of the classroom are covered with various animal specimens soaked in solutions. Next to it stands a huge storage cabinet, which stores the possible materials that students may use during the potion making process. Various raw materials used. In front of the classroom desk is a blackboard, which contains the materials and detailed steps required for students to prepare potions. However, this classroom is not as warm and comfortable as the main building of the castle. It exudes a slightly cold atmosphere, making people feel colder than the castle above. Especially in winter, the cold is so biting that the breath you exhale can even condense into clouds of white mist. After the two jogged all the way to the classroom, Arthur looked around. Before Snape arrived, Harry, Ron, and Neville were already in their seats. Arthur took a look and nodded. The location was good, right under Snape's nose. Arthur did not go to find Harry, but took Hermione to find a small corner to the side, sat down, and kept his presence as low as possible. Hermione was a little confused. Last time you told us that Snape would not harm students, and you also made a bunch of nonsense. Now why are you taking his class like this? Why is Arthur sitting in this position? Aren't there two empty seats next to Harry? Hermione, trust me, you'll know after class. Although Hermione was a little skeptical, she still believed Arthur and sat down in her seat, because in her impression, no matter what happened, Arthur was always right. Arthur and Hermione hadn't chatted for long before Snape walked quickly into the classroom, the sleeves of his black wizard robes fluttering with his steps. After standing on the podium, Snape's sharp, keen, and intimidating eyes, which seemed to be able to see through other people's hearts at a glance, glanced around, and the classroom instantly fell silent. Let's start the roll call now. Like other professors, Snape took out the list and started the roll call as soon as the class started. When Snape pointed at Harry, he stopped and said venomously, "Harry Potter, they say you defeated the mysterious man. Now you are famous in Hogwarts. I just don't know if your strength and fame can make it better match." Hearing Snape's words, all the Slytherin students covered their mouths and laughed. Harry looked at the Slytherin students next door and regretted being seated so far forward. Now he finally understood why Arthur and Hermione had to sit in an inconspicuous position at the back. Snape ignored the jeers and continued to name names. Arthur Green. Where's the man? Professor, I'm here. Arthur was sure that Snape did it on purpose. In such a big place, it was impossible for him to enter the classroom for so long without seeing him. Snape continued to say sarcastically, "Isn't this the notorious Arthur Green of Slytherin? Why is he sitting in a small corner? Professor, I think it's very good here." Really? It turns out that Arthur Green only dares to hide in the corner. The Slytherin students around wanted to laugh like before, but they were intimidated by Arthur's majesty and did not dare to make a sound. After all, Arthur was different from Harry. They didn't want to offend Arthur and end up lying naked and seriously injured in the common room the next day. It would be too embarrassing. Snape looked at the Slytherin students who didn't dare to make any sound. He was a little annoyed and cursed in his heart, "These losers." Hermione was a little angry when she heard Snape's words. She felt that as a professor, how could he talk about his students like this? She wanted to refute Arthur, but was stopped by Arthur when she was about to raise her hands and stand up. "Hermione, don't be like this. Snape just has a bit of a venomous tongue. Just treat it as a fart." I understand, can you let me go first?" In order to stop Hermione, Arthur almost hugged her whole body. After noticing the posture of the two, Arthur quickly let go of Hermione, and the atmosphere became awkward for a moment. "Sorry, Hermione, I was a little anxious just now. Are you okay?" Arthur asked sheepishly. Hermione's face turned red and she lowered her head to flip through the book, avoiding Arthur's sight. Chapter 22 Vicious Snape. Hermione, Snape is done with his nonsense and class has begun. Arthur reminded, seeing that Hermione was still in a daze. After hearing Arthur's words, Hermione shook her head and stopped her random thoughts. She looked up and saw that Snape had already written the potion ingredients on the blackboard at the front. Yeah. Without looking at Arthur, Hermione just responded to him in a low voice, then picked up a pen and started recording. Arthur Green, do you know the questions I asked Mr. Pot just now? A voice came from behind Arthur. Hermione. Snape appeared behind them at some point, grabbed Arthur's shoulders and asked Rode. I'm sorry, Professor, I was distracted just now. Can you ask me again? Arthur was so focused on Hermione that he didn't even hear what Snape was saying. It seems that Mr. Arthur Green doesn't like this class very much. I heard from other professors that you are very good and you performed very well during the class. Why is there something wrong with this class? I don't know, so I just talked to Mr. Pot. Just say you don't know, there's no shame in it. Professor Snape, Before Arthur could finish what he said, Snape interrupted him and said, Okay, I'll give you another chance. If you grind narcissus root into powder and add it to the wormwood infusion, what potion can I get? Do you know? You can get the water of life and death, which is a sleeping pill and very powerful. Am I right? Seeing Arthur's confident look, Snape was annoyed and continued to ask, where can I find a fecal stone and tell me the difference between Aconitum scaphoides and Aconitum wolfsbane? Bezoar has a strong detoxifying effect and can be taken from the stomach of goats. Aconitum navicularis and Aconitum wolfsbane are the same plant, collectively called Aconitum. Professor Snape, am I correct? Sit down. It's just memorizing from the textbook. It's nothing special. 1 point for Slytherin. As for you, Mr. Potato, because you contradicted the professor, 1 point will be deducted from Gryffindor. After hearing Snape's words, the Slytherin students cheered. Do you all know the answer to the question just now? Why are you so stunned? Why don't you quickly pick up your notes and write them down? Snape's words instantly silenced the originally noisy classroom. Now the potions class continues. Your task today is to prepare a potion to treat boils. This kind of potion is very simple to prepare. You only need. Although Snape's words were a bit venomous, it was undeniable that he was definitely a master in potions. Arthur watched him explain and demonstrate in front, and his movements and operations were all fluent. Now put down your quills, work in pairs, and start configuring according to the steps I told you. I want to check it before get out of class ends. Arthur and Hermione were in a group. The two did not communicate much. Hermione weighed dried nettles, while Arthur crushed the snake's fangs. The two had a clear division of labor. They quickly prepared all the medicinal materials and began to prepare potions in the crucible. Simon, put down your wand, and you idiots who don't listen, put down your textbooks and follow the steps on my blackboard. And Harry, has your brain been eaten by a troll? You missed something magical. Medicine. Mr. Weasley, the troll will shake his head pitifully at you when he sees your brain. Use your eyes to take a good look at what I wrote on the blackboard. All the students in the potions classroom took action. Snape also walked down from the podium and wandered back and forth among the student desks, criticizing wherever he went. Especially Harry, who was given special attention. Pu came to Harry's cauldron while walking, criticized and ridiculed a few words, left, and then came back not long after. Of course, Arthur's cauldron was often inspected by Snape, and sometimes he picked it up to look at it. Then Snape left a generic potion and never came back. It seemed that his talent in potions was not enough for Snape, but the way Arthur looked at Snape, taking his class should be enough. Just when Arthur was a little thankful that Snape didn't continue to cause trouble for him, he heard a bang and then a thick, acidic green smoke appeared in the potions classroom. Neville accidentally boiled Seamus' cauldron into a twisted and deformed object. Not a drop of the potion inside was left, and all of it spilled on the stone floor, leaving a burnt mark and a pungent smell permeated the entire classroom. The potion not only left irreparable holes in the students' shoes, but also soaked Neville's entire body in the potion. Just hearing a few hiss sounds, the classroom was filled with exclamations one after another, and the whole class quickly jumped on the stools. The moment the cauldron tipped over, red and swollen boils began to appear all over Neville's body, causing him to cry loudly in pain. "Idiot!" Snape cursed, then used the wand in his hand to clean up the spilled potion on the ground. Looking at Neville, who had red and swollen boils all over his body, Snape asked, "Did you put the porcupine quill in the cauldron while it was still being heated?" Regardless of Neville's answer, Snape sternly said to Seamus next to him, "Send him to the school infirmary quickly." Then Snape said to Harry Ron, who was not far away, "Pote, I remember you are not friends, why don't you stop him, don't you know this will be dangerous?" Harry wanted to defend himself, but Snape didn't give him a chance and told him directly that Gryffindor would deduct another point for his behavior. Harry was a little angry, but fortunately Ron pulled him aside, otherwise the Gryffindor students would have found out that their house points had been cleared tonight, and Snape would definitely be able to do this. An hour later, when get out of class was about to end, Snape looked at the potion prepared by Arthur and Hermione, and gave Slytherin and Gryffindor 1 point each with an expressionless expression. After class, Harry and Ron, who were depressed, came to Arthur and the others. Seeing Hermione looking a little distracted, Harry asked curiously, "Hermione, what's wrong with you? Didn't you already add 1 point to Gryffindor?" Ron said from the side, "You used to be the most active in raising your hands in class. Why haven't you been so active in this class? You didn't respond when Snape asked questions. You must be afraid of Snape too." Hermione didn't say anything, glared at Ron, and left with a red face holding a few books. "Hey, I didn't say anything, did I?" "Arthur, did you have a fight?" Ron asked Arthur doubtfully. Arthur didn't say much to the two of them. After saying goodbye, he caught up with Hermione. "Harry, what happened to them both today?" "I don't know either. Get out of class is over, what are you two doing here? Do you want to stay and clean the classroom?" Snape's voice suddenly appeared behind Harry and Ron, who were so frightened that they picked up their books and ran away. Snape ignored them, but looked at Arthur and Hermione with a thoughtful expression. The sharpness and coldness in his eyes gradually faded away, replaced by a deep tenderness. Chapter 23 Patronus Curse. "Professor Flitwick, please wait, I have something to ask you." After the charms class, Flitwick heard someone calling his name. From the high platform, he looked down and saw Arthur's figure, and asked, "Mr. Green, is there any problem?" "Professor, I recently discovered a dark magical creature, the Dementor, in the book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The book states that only the Patronus charm can expel it, but I haven't found this in the library yet. This is a spell, so I want to ask you for advice." "Ah, it's the Patronus charm. It's a very advanced spell. You're only in the first grade, so it's normal that you don't have access to it. Well, come to my office after you finish your meal. It's on the 8th floor of the West Tower. Let's sit down and talk slowly." After hearing what Professor Flitwick said, Arthur was a little surprised and quickly thanked him. He liked this kind of professor who loved to teach students. "Excellent students always get special treatment, Mr. Green, I'll wait for you in the office." After that, he left the classroom. Arthur didn't stop for long, and jogged all the way to the Gryffindor table in the Great Hall, where he sat down next to Hermione. Hermione saw Arthur devouring his food as soon as he sat down and asked curiously, Arthur, I saw you went to see Professor Flitwick right after class. What happened? 3 days have passed since the potions class, and both of them tacitly did not mention the potions class again. The relationship between Arthur and Hermione seemed to be back to the past, but neither of them noticed that the relationship between them there seemed to be some subtle changes in the relationship. Nothing, just asking Professor Flitwick for some knowledge about the patroness charm. Arthur answered Hermione's question while eating. Hermione asked, "Is it a spell to repel Dementors?" Arthur gave her a thumbs up. "Look, this is the top student." As soon as I mentioned the magic spell, she knew what it was for, unlike the hairy trio opposite, who all looked at the two of them. "I don't know what they are talking about." "Great, Arthur, do you know this magic spell? Can you teach it to me?" "Ahem, I'll go to Professor Flitwick's office later. Wait until I learn it first. I'll teach you if I can." Seeing Arthur eating so fast, Hermione couldn't help but patted him on the back, then handed him a glass of fresh pumpkin juice and said with concern, "Arthur, eat slowly, don't choke." After drinking the pumpkin juice, Arthur said goodbye to Hermione. "I'm leaving now. I'll see you in the afternoon for flying lessons. By the way, if Tom asks you for food, just give him some water. Don't give him other food. I'm helping him lose weight." Hermione nodded in agreement. Boom, boom, boom. On the 8th floor of the West Tower, Professor Flitwick's office. "Please come in." "Professor Flitwick, here I come." "Mr. Green, please sit down. Would you like some juice?" Arthur shook his head and replied, "No, Professor, I just drank a large glass of pumpkin juice." Professor Flitwick, "Okay, Mr. Green, you want to learn the patroness charm, right? That is a very advanced spell. I want to test you first to see if you have the ability to learn it." After speaking, Professor Flitwick waved his wand, and a practice dummy appeared in his office. "Don't be shy, Mr. Green, show me the spells you know. I want to see how well you master other spells." Arthur nodded, raised his wand to the dummy, and cast the spells he knew in the system list one by one. Fluorescence. Wingardium Leviosa. Flying around. Total petrification. Shattered to pieces. Fire is raging. Cleaned up like new. More than half an hour later, after Arthur showed off all the spells he knew, he turned to look at Professor Flitwick. Flitwick looked at Arthur in shock. "Damn, this young man. Mr. Green, did you grow up in a wizarding family? When did you start learning magic?" "No, Professor Flitwick, I grew up in an orphanage, and I learned most of the magic by myself when I was bored during the summer vacation." Flitwick wiped the sweat from his head, patted his chest, his eyes revealed a little bit of happiness and relief, and said to himself, "Fortunately, what you came to ask me about is the patroness charm, not some weird black magic. Mr. Green, I noticed that you are not only talented, but also so keen on learning. Almost every time I come to the library, I can see you immersed in studying. Really, the Sorting Hat's decision is regrettable. It should you're in Ravenclaw, not Slytherin." Arthur also nodded, agreeing with Flitwick's words. "Okay, Mr. Green, you have passed my test. If you want to learn the patroness charm, I can teach you. The patroness spell is a very powerful magic that can protect yourself and others from harm. First, we need to relax our body and mind. When the mind is relaxed, our thinking will be clearer. Then, try your best to recall something happy or something full of love and hope. Next, we need to use a spell to summon the patroness. Remember the spell, Expecto Patronum. Come on, Mr. Green, do as I say and try it again." Arthur took a deep breath, straightened his body, held his wand tightly, stared firmly at the phantom of Dementors created by Flitwick's magic in front of him, and recited the patroness charm aloud, Expecto Patronum. Arthur felt his heartbeat synchronize with the rhythm of the wand, which drew a semicircle in the air, as if drawing an invisible round shield to protect him and everything around him. The tip of the wand flashes brightly, forming a smart halo. The halo flew into the air and turned into a majestic raven. It was noble and majestic, like a mythical beast from ancient mythology. The Dementor also turned into a wisp of blue smoke under this strong light. Dissipated in the air. Successful, Arthur said in surprise, looking at the raven in front of him. Its whole body is grey and translucent, but its eyes shine like red gems, as mysterious and eye-catching as a ghost wandering in the fog. After seeing Arthur's success, Flitwick clapped happily and then said, "Mr. Green, although I have praised you many times, I still want to emphasize again that your talent is really extraordinary. In all these years, I have never seen anyone succeed in trying the Patronus charm for the first time and successfully summon a Patronus. Now, you may be the youngest wizard who can cast the Patronus charm." Chapter 24, The Strange Patron Saint. Arthur looked at the mirror in front of him and the patron saint standing above him, showing a strange expression. Most wizards' Patronus are related to things they love deeply. For example, Severus Snape's Patronus is a deer because he loves Lily deeply. Nymphadora Tonks's Patronus is a wolf because she loves Lily deeply. Love Lupin. Do you like Tom that much? Looking at the raven's blood-red eyes, Arthur himself felt a little shuddering. He couldn't understand why the patron saint curse, as an upright spell, summoned a patron saint with such terrifying eyes. Professor Flitwick was also carefully observing the eyes of Arthur's patroness, and he also felt a little strange. Flitwick had never seen a patroness with such terrifying eyes, which made him feel a little uneasy. However, after some discussion between the two, he and Arthur still could not come to any conclusion. Finally, Professor Flitwick guessed that this might also be because of Arthur's talent. After all, Arthur had surpassed many older wizards by succeeding on his first attempt at casting the Patronus charm. "Professor Flitwick, if you cast the Patronus charm with malice, what would you summon?" Upon hearing Arthur's words, Professor Flitwick did not answer directly, but turned to Arthur with a smile and asked, "Arthur, what do you think magic is?" Arthur thought for a while and said, "Professor Flitwick, my understanding of magic is a mysterious power that can fulfill people's wishes. Whether it's transfiguration or other magic, wizards control and use this power through wands to change the things around them as they wish. Spells are like wizards telling their wishes to the mysterious power in order to get the results they want." After hearing Arthur's answer, Professor Flitwick's eyes showed deep appreciation. He praised, "A very wonderful metaphor, and so appropriate. Because of this, no one can cast the Patronus spell with malice, because it is contrary to your wishes." Arthur nodded. The same reason applies to the casting of black magic, which requires the wizard to bring great malice. Although he failed to figure out the problem with the eyes of the Raven Patronus in the end, Arthur gained a lot from this trip. After opening the system panel, the spell bar has shown, Patronus Charm LV1, 37.6%. A teacher has taught me how to make it very fast. It is estimated that I will be able to upgrade after practicing a few times. After leaving Professor Flitwick's office, Arthur did not return to his dormitory, but went straight to the lawn outside Hogwarts Castle. Hermione and Harry were already waiting here. Since last week, Harry and Ron have been whispering in Arthur's ears, eagerly looking forward to riding their broomsticks and flying into the sky. However, to be honest, Arthur didn't have much interest in such an uncomfortable flying tool as a flying broom. He was wondering why, even though wizards had mastered such magical magic, there were so few entertainment projects. It seemed that there were no other sports except that dangerous sport, Quidditch. "Arthur, you're back. How is your study with Professor Flitwick going?" Arthur replied confidently, "Hermione, are you questioning my talent?" Hearing Arthur's words, Hermione was a little excited. She grabbed Arthur's hand and said, Have you learned it yet? Show me quickly. I'll show it to you some night, with glare. Harry, Ron, and Neville all felt that Arthur and Hermione were terrible. They had already finished class and had to go to the professor for tutoring. It was really too complicated. A few people sat on the grass and chatted for a while, and then Slytherin students arrived one after another, including Malfoy. Perhaps because he saw Arthur sitting there, Malfoy did not step forward to provoke Potter. Instead, he and his companions boasted about riding a broomstick and scaring Muggle helicopters. After hearing Malfoy's words, the surrounding students from wizarding families began to share their experiences of riding broomsticks when they were children. Even Ron couldn't help but start bragging that he once almost hit a Muggle glider. When Harry heard the words of the people around him, he showed a longing expression and began to imagine the feeling of flying in the sky. Hermione and Neville were a little worried about their flying lessons. After all, they had never tried such an adventure. Arthur is completely fearless. He is extremely confident in the power of his talent. Now he has a feeling that you can do whatever you want and I am invincible. The students around were discussing broomsticks and Quidditch enthusiastically, and a few students even got into an argument over the different views on Quidditch and Muggle football. Children from wizarding families think that football only has a ball that cannot fly and is really uninteresting, while students from Muggle families think that Quidditch is not a sport at all and is simply risking one's life. Arthur, Harry, have you ever ridden a broomstick? Hermione asked the two of them worriedly as she listened to the chaotic discussions among the people around her. Arthur shook his head and said to Hermione, "No, and I hate riding a broomstick." Unlike Arthur, Harry is looking forward to flying on a broomstick and participating in Quidditch matches. Ron said, "You don't understand. It's my dream to ride on a broomstick and represent the college in the Quidditch match. Alas, it's just a pity that the first grade is not allowed to participate in the Quidditch match, otherwise I would definitely sign up." "What are you doing? Why don't you stand up quickly and start class?" A stern voice appeared, interrupting everyone's conversation. Everyone looked back and saw that their flying teacher, Ms. Hooch, was here. "Okay, now please stand in 2 rows, put a broomstick at your feet, and then pay attention to my command, hurry up, hurry up." Soon, the students stood up according to Ms. Hooch's instructions, with a broomstick placed at each person's feet. Ms. Hooch looked around the room, nodded with satisfaction, and then said, "Now, please extend your right hand, place it on top of the broomstick, and say with me, 'Get up.'" Everyone followed Ms. Hooch's request and shouted, "Get up." Several students' broomsticks, including Harry's, quickly flew into their hands after hearing the shouting, while other broomsticks, such as Hermione's, just rolled on the spot. Only Arthur and Neville's broomsticks showed no reaction. Everyone tried several more times, and almost everyone succeeded. Even Neville's broom vibrated slightly, but Arthur's broom remained unresponsive. It seems that Arthur doesn't like broomstick, and broomstick doesn't seem to like him either. I hope Arthur's broom can fly smoothly when it takes off later. Chapter 25 Marauder's Map. "Mr. Green, time is precious, don't waste it anymore. You two, pick up the broom and continue the next lesson with us." After looking at Arthur and Neville, Ms. Hooch shook her head helplessly and said. Arthur felt a little embarrassed and couldn't help but scratch his hair. Ever since he came into contact with magic, he has performed well in any course and has never encountered such a situation. He began to wonder if he had picked up the wrong broom. It was just an ordinary broom, not a magic broom. Ms. Hooch picked up the whistle hanging on her chest, looked at the students who were all ready and said, "Everyone, pay attention to the sound of my whistle. When I blow the whistle, you must kick your legs quickly to lift yourself off the ground. Remember, be sure to push hard, make sure you hold the broom firmly, rise slowly, and then let." Before Ms. Hooch finished speaking, Neville was so nervous that he kicked off the ground hard and rushed high into the sky on his broomstick. The speed is getting faster and faster, soaring into the sky. Come back, kid. Ms. Hooch shouted anxiously, but the broom still rose straight up. Neville looked at the ground with a pale face and quickly moved away from him, his mouth wide open, gasping for breath, and then slipped off the broom. Arresto momentum. At the critical moment, Arthur took out his wand and saved Neville's life. Ms. Hooch, who was beside her, was also frightened by Neville. She quickly approached and after checking, no fractures were found. She was just overly frightened and fainted. After Ms. Hooch breathed a sigh of relief, she said to Arthur, "Well done. Mr. Green, 5 points for Slytherin." The Slytherin students cheered when they heard Ms. Hooch's words. They don't necessarily like Arthur, but they definitely like to see their college score points. Hearing Slytherin's cheers, the Gryffindor students did not cynicize this time. After all, Arthur saved students from their own college. "I want to take this child to the hospital immediately. No one of you is allowed to act without authorization. Everyone put the broomstick back to its place. If I find someone else holding it when I come back, then he will not be able to step into the hospital again. Gate of Gwarts." After saying that, Ms. Hooch carried Neville to the school infirmary. Seeing Ms. Hooch walking away, Malfoy started to laugh loudly. "Did you all see what he looked like, that stupid guy?" The Slytherin students standing next to him also echoed his ridicule. The relationship between the two houses, which seemed to have eased just now, broke down due to Malfoy's ridicule, and the students on both sides began to mock each other again. Arthur didn't want to get involved in these disputes. He took Hermione's hand and sat down on the grass nearby. When the Slytherin students saw Arthur leave the crowd and sit far away, they became bolder and taunted him even more vigorously. Hermione saw the mutual taunts between the two sides becoming more and more intense, with Parvati Patil and Pansy's spit almost spraying into each other's faces. She said worriedly, "Arthur, are they going to fight?" "Don't worry, the two colleges have been arguing for so many years, and there has never been a fight between the two sides. At most, they only sneak attacks on each other in private. But I'm still a little worried. If there's a fight, will Harry and Parvati be expelled?" Arthur said, "The Slytherins would taunt the dogs on the roadside when they saw them. If they could really fight, these people would have been beaten to death long ago." Malfoy snatched Neville's memory ball, quickly got on his broomstick and got off the ground. In order to regain the memory ball, Harry was also ready to jump on the broom and chase Malfoy. Seeing this situation, Hermione could no longer sit back and ignore it. She quickly rushed forward and warned Harry seriously. Arthur didn't want to care about them and let them make trouble. Nothing would happen at Hogwarts anyway, so he sat down, picked up a spell book and started reading seriously. "Arthur, Harry was taken away by Professor McGonagall. Will he be expelled?" Hermione ran to Arthur and asked anxiously. "Don't worry, unless Dumbledore jumps from the astronomy tower and falls to his death, Harry will definitely be fine." "What, you're going to be Gryffindor's seeker?" Ron said with a shocked look on his face. During dinner, Harry told them about Professor McGonagall's visit to him. After listening, Ron suddenly felt that the pie in his hand no longer tasted good. Arthur ignored the conversations of several people and took advantage of dinner time to find the Weasley twins. "Hi, George, Fred, good evening, I have something to ask you for." Arthur knew that the two brothers had the Marauders map and wanted to borrow it from them. Seeing that Arthur was hesitant to speak, the Weasley twins looked at each other and understood immediately. They smiled and led Arthur to the bottom of the stairs at the corner. George winked and asked, "Arthur, what do you want from us? Do you want some prank props, or do you want to do some prank and need our help? Do you have any props so you can go out at night without being caught by Filch?" After hearing Arthur's words, the two brothers cheered, and then carried Arthur to the corridor outside the door. After they came out, the two brothers said in unison, "Arthur, We misjudged you. We always thought you were a good kid who abides by school rules. But great job. Arthur, you have a good vision and found us brothers. After speaking, Arthur couldn't tell whether it was George or Fred. He took out a piece of parchment folded into a square from his pocket and looked very worn. Arthur pretended not to recognize the Marauders' map and asked them, "What is this?" After hearing Arthur's question, the two brothers said to Arthur very proudly, "This is the secret of our success. We found this in Filch's office when we were in first grade." After that, George took out his wand, pointed at the map and said, "I solemnly swear that I will do no good." In an instant, the fine ink flowing from the tip of George's wand intertwined on the paper like a spider web, crisscrossing until it covered every corner of the parchment, and finally the name and maker of the map appeared. It's a detailed map of Hogwarts Castle and the surrounding grounds, but most strikingly, it shows everyone's real-time location. Arthur exclaimed, "Great, George, Fred, you two must lend me the Marauders' map." "George, of course, I'll give it to you now. Remember to return it to me after you use it. We still have a lot of places to visit in Hogwarts. When we finish exploring, we will give you the map." "Fred, remember Arthur, when you're done, tap the map with your wand and say the prank is over, and the pattern will disappear. And I wish you good luck tonight." Arthur put away the map, nodded to show that he understood, said goodbye to the two brothers, returned to the long table, and had dinner.